What if you didn't wake up in your bed, but in the heart of ancient Babylon? No privacy, no democracy, no Google. The streets hum with ritual chants. The gods are always watching, and so are the priests. The sun burns hotter here, and so do the punishments. One wrong move, one suspicious glance, and you could vanish without a trace. Tonight, we're diving headfirst into a world of empire, excess, and eerie intelligence. A civilization so advanced it makes modern life feel primitive, and so oppressive it would shatter your sense of self. Forget what you learned in school. Ancient Babylon wasn't just dusty ruins and cool ziggurats. It was a psychological machine, designed to break you, reshape you, and own your very soul. So, before we enter the gates, hit that like button and subscribe, but only if you're ready to confront a past that thinks it's your god. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your kingdom? Now, close the curtains. Slow your breathing, and brace your modern mind, because you just stepped into Babylon. And Babylon does not care if you're ready. The light is low. Your room is quiet. Perhaps a breeze hums outside the window, or the soft sigh of your own breathing fills the space like a lullaby. Wherever you are in this moment, this story begins slowly. It begins gently, and it asks almost nothing of you, other than to listen, or drift, or sleep. Sleep is allowed here. In fact, it is expected. This is not the history they teach you in schools. It is not the clamor of dates and battles and names you cannot pronounce. This is not a test. There is nothing to memorize, nothing to recite. There is only sound, slow and hushed, like a reed flute played beneath moonlight. There is only time, stretching out in long, quiet threads. You will not need to follow it. Let it wrap around you. This story is about a place so ancient it feels unreal, about a world so advanced it would dazzle you, a world so strange it might unseat your mind from the way it understands things. We are going to ancient Babylon, but not the Babylon of myths or madness or miracles, not the crumbling one seen in dusty books or imagined in crayon-colored temples on classroom posters. No, this is the real one, the pulsing, sweating, breathing, living Babylon, the one of river mud and incense smoke, of empire and dreams. The one where people woke up every day not knowing whether their gods were pleased or furious, not knowing if the floodwaters would recede or rise. Babylon, that grand, low city of brick and heat and faith. Babylon of the gardens, if the legends are true. Babylon of the stars, if the priests were right. Babylon of the mind, where knowledge and belief were not enemies, but lovers. You might think your modern thoughts could survive a day there. You might think you could hold on to yourself. But by the time the sun fell and the incense burned down, the city would have changed you, bent your thoughts into clay, whispered things into your sleep, and you would not know if you had learned something, or forgotten everything that made you who you are. That is why the title is what it is. That is why this whisper winds its way to you now, because ancient Babylon would destroy your mind, softly, completely, and without asking your permission. Tonight we do not fear that. We welcome it. We surrender to it. We let ourselves sink into it like warm water. The deeper we go, the calmer we feel. The stranger it gets, the slower we breathe. This is not a podcast. This is not a lecture. This is a spell woven in quiet narration, a lullaby for your rational thoughts, a little bridge between sleep and time travel. And so, listener, if your eyelids begin to lower, let them. If your thoughts wander into dreams, let them. You may fall asleep while listening. That is perfectly fine. In fact, it is beautiful. This story will not mind. It will wait for you. It will curl up beside you. It will seep into your bones and teach you even in slumber. Or perhaps especially then. For now, listen closely. Breathe slowly. Imagine you are stepping away from your present moment, stepping across the dust of centuries. We are not going to visit Babylon. We are going to live in it. Not forever. Just for a single, strange day. Try to survive it. Try to understand it. Try to walk its streets and look up at its ziggurats and speak its words with a tongue that does not yet know how. Try for a little while to forget that you were ever born in this age. Try for a little while to belong to another. You will. Wake into it soon. You will feel the air on your skin. You will wear their clothes, speak their language, follow their customs. You may not understand it all. That is part of the dream. That is part of the story. And now, let us begin. You are not where you were. You are not who you were. Before your eyes even open, you know. The air is too thick, too warm, too textured with smells you cannot name. The light behind your closed eyelids is not the blue-gray of your usual dawn, but something heavier, gold, mixed with dust, a dull shimmer that seems to hum rather than shine. The ground beneath you is not flat or forgiving. It is straw-stuffed cloth laid across packed earth. The blanket over you is scratchy wool, worn thin at the edges, carrying the musky scent of old smoke and sweat. You do not move right away. You listen, and that is when you feel it more deeply. You are elsewhere. You hear water moving. Not modern plumbing, no rush of pipes or hum of wires, but the slow, living rhythm of a river outside stone walls. Somewhere beyond the thick clay brick of the home, it gurgles and laps, like a breathing thing. Closer by, you hear sandals dragging across hard ground, soft voices speaking in a language you do not understand. But your dreaming mind seems to translate it anyway. The consonants are curled and flowing, the syllables long and musical. It is not a conversation. It is a rhythm. It is a morning. You open your eyes. Above you, a wooden ceiling of uneven beams, blackened with soot. The walls are made of mud brick, thick and cool, with small alcoves carved into them where oil lamps might rest when night falls again. One of those lamps, just a stub of flame now, flickers low on a clay shelf. It gives off a sour, earthy smell, the kind of light that is grown, not manufactured. Your fingers brush the edge of the blanket and you feel the texture, coarse and hand-woven, slightly damp from the night. The chill is leaving the air now. Already you can feel heat rising, slowly from the ground outside, like the city itself is stretching its limbs and preparing to sweat. Your own body feels strange. You sit up. Your clothes are not your own. A linen tunic, soft and open at the neck, hangs loosely over your shoulders. It smells of the sun. Beneath it, your skin feels unfamiliar, like it has been scrubbed with sand, not soap. You reach for your feet and find sandals made of woven fiber, brittle in texture, bound with straps. You fit them to your feet and they whisper against your soles like dry grass. You stand. The floor is uneven. The room is spare. Not poor, not uncomfortable, just simple in a way you are not used to. A jar rests in the corner, covered in cloth. A bundle of dried herbs hangs near the door, their smell sharp and grounding. Time, perhaps, or something older. There are no clocks, no mirrors, no wires. The only evidence of time is the light on the floor and the feel in your bones. You step outside, and the world unfolds. It is not loud. It is not chaotic. It is slow, like a ritual, like breath. The alley outside your dwelling is narrow and shaded, with walls that curve and lean like a softened stone. The ground is hard-packed clay, scattered with husks and petals. A child runs barefoot past you chasing a goat, laughter rising and then fading like birdsong. The buildings lean in on both sides, square, flat-roofed, joined like puzzle pieces. They smell of heat, of earth, of yesterday's fire. Above you, the sky is pale, not empty, but heavy with promise. 1,000 tiny dust motes spin in the morning sun like spirits waking with the city. You look toward the horizon and see it. The massive wall of the inner city, rising with impossible weight. Beyond it, rooftops stretch like pottery shards, clustered and warm, all cradled between the slow curve of the river and the open breath of the steppe. You smell water. You smell cumin. You smell oil heating on clay stoves. You smell animals, oxen, goats, dogs, and behind them, deeper still, the distant trail of incense burned in prayer. The noise grows, but it never rushes. Voices chant low from a temple courtyard. A vendor calls out in measured tones, naming the things he has carried from the south: dates, fish, onions, wool, the clink of bronze tools, the soft cry of doves, the crunch of barley under cartwheels. Everything sounds as if it belongs. Everything feels very old, but also very awake. A breeze moves through the city. It carries with it the scent of reeds from the river and the faint sting of salt from baked clay. You inhale. Deeply. It is the kind of breath you cannot take in your own time. It is a breath that connects you to land, to labor, to lineage. It feels holy. You walk. The soles of your sandals kiss the earth with each step, whispering with the dust. A woman passes you carrying a jug on her head, her posture regal, her eyes lined with kohl. A man nods at her from his doorway, palms pressed, briefly together in greeting. You realize you are being watched, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. You are dressed properly, but your eyes are different. You look, perhaps, like you have seen another world. And maybe you have. You walk further into the pulse of the waking city, and Babylon opens to you. It does not roar, it does not demand, it waits. And as you walk, the sounds begin to soften again. The further you go, the more dreamlike it becomes. As you walk, the sounds begin to soften again. The further you go, the more dreamlike it becomes. You pass beneath an arched doorway where reeds hang like a curtain. You cross a narrow bridge of woven wood. You feel the warmth of the first sunbeams on your arms. You hear your own breath slowing. You are not quite awake. You are not quite dreaming. You are in Babylon. You are dressed like them now. But it takes time to notice the difference. It is not a costume. It is not disguise. It is an inheritance, layered, lived in, and familiar, even though you only woke into it this morning. You run your fingers along the edge of your tunic. It is made of linen, hand-woven, and sun-bleached. There are tiny imperfections in the weave, flecks of husk still caught between threads, a subtle diagonal pattern near the collar where the weaver's rhythm must have changed. It is soft where the body needs comfort, coarser where the sun and work will find it. The linen breathes, the way cloth used to when it came from living plants and not factories. It holds the scent of yesterday, smoke and salt, and maybe oil from a pressed fig seed. Over it, you wear a second layer, a kind of shawl or wrap, wide and long, draped diagonally across one shoulder. It is not tied. It is held in place by its own weight and your posture. This outer garment is heavier. It is wool, dyed a shade, of dusty blue that has faded near the hem to something more like ash. The fibers are thicker. They itch a little at the edges, but you are told this means it is real, unblended, warm against the skin and strong against the wear of wind and time. You feel its fringe brush your wrist as you move. A loose thread snags against your thumb. Even imperfections seem crafted here, intentional somehow. If you are a woman in this time, your garments fall differently. They wrap more fully, covering the arms and falling near the ankle, bound by a woven belt at the waist. The fabric may Be adorned with tiny beads. Not flashy, just hints of color like pressed berries or smoothed shell. Hair is often bound up or covered, depending on the day, the custom, the household. But beauty is not hidden. It is carved in kohl-lined eyes and long fingers stained faintly with clay or berry. If you are a man, the tunic is shorter, practical. Arms bare, feet bound in sandals with stiff leather straps that creak when you walk. Your hair might be curled with oil or left loose with dust. Your beard, if you have one, is a mark of age and voice and weight. It is not grown in haste, but tended like a garden, oiled, combed, shaped with deliberate pride. You may wear a headdress if your station allows, a square cloth fixed with a band, not ostentatious but precise, a sign that you know your place and live by its rhythm. Children wear less. Simple wraps, loose and soft, easy to clean, easy to run in. Their limbs are tanned and quick. Their eyes are painted with stories not yet written. Even the babies are dressed with care, swaddled in reed fiber cloths, embroidered not for fashion but for ritual, for meaning. Footwear is basic, practical, and shaped by the land. Sandals made from palm fiber or leather, softened by months of walking and patched by skilled hands when the soles wear thin. They slap lightly against the ground with each step, their sound part of the city's rhythm. If the weather is colder, you wrap your feet in cloth. If you are poor, you may walk barefoot, your soles hardened like bark, your toes spread wide from gripping earth instead of pavement. Adornment comes slowly, deliberately. Jewelry is not display. It is protection. A carved stone pendant shaped like an eye, a small gold ring etched with symbols. A bracelet made of fired clay beads strung on linen thread. These are not decorations but charms, meant to guard against misfortune or invite favor. They clink softly when you move. Each has a sound, a purpose, a whisper of intention. And then there are the colors. Dyes are sacred. Nothing is wasted. Indigo is rare, drawn from distant trade. Ochre is local, common, beloved. There are reds, yes, from crushed madder roots, and deep browns from walnut husk. But many wear undyed fabric, the soft pale of natural linen or the whisper gray of sun-faded wool. These tones do not shout. They belong to the city's light, to the river haze and the clay dust and the golden shimmer of morning. You do not choose your clothing the way you once did. Here, it is function first. But even within the rules, there is grace. The angle of a wrap, the looseness of a sleeve, the faint embroidery on a hem. These are quiet acts of self-expression. Not loud, not boastful. Just human, ancient, real. Your clothes now rustle as you walk. They hold the warmth of your body. They remember the fire from last night. And if you close your eyes and breathe in, you can smell the city in their fibers. The oil from the market, the damp stone of the bathhouse, the soft smoke of temple incense. You are not dressed like a Babylonian. You are a Babylonian. Don't forget to bow before the Lord. It is not just what you wear that makes you belong in this world. It is how you move, how you hold your hands, where you place your eyes, what you say, and more importantly, what you do not. Here, behavior is language, and language is never wasted. From the moment you leave your dwelling, the rules begin to hum beneath your feet. And this is not a place of loud greetings or loose talk. You do not wave. You do not call out across the street. Your gestures are small, measured, and purposeful. To greet someone is to bow slightly. Not a full bend at the waist, but a tilt of the head, a lowering of the gaze. It is a quiet acknowledgement, not a demand for attention. If the person is older or of higher status, you go lower, just enough to show your awareness, just enough to show respect. When you speak, your voice stays low, not secretive, not hidden, just calm. Volume implies emotion. Emotion implies disorder. Here, emotion is contained like water in a jar, carefully, intentionally. Words are offered slowly, with space around them. Each syllable matters. Each phrase is a thread in a larger tapestry of etiquette. You do not interrupt. You do not rush. Silence is not uncomfortable. It is a sign of thought, a sign of listening. Hands have their own language. When you are uncertain or asking something of someone, you press your right hand to your chest. When you offer a gift or a thought, you extend both hands, palms up, never one, never from the left alone. The left is used for lesser things, and though no one will shame you aloud, they will notice if you forget. Even the way you sit matters. Cross-legged on the floor, back straight, eyes lowered if you are young. Leaning is casual. Lounging is disrespectful. To sprawl is to forget your place in the order of things. When you enter a home that is not your own, you announce yourself softly. Not with a knock, but with a cough or a call, the kind that lets your host know you have arrived but gives them time to receive you properly. You do not step fully inside until invited. You remove your sandals at the threshold, even if the earth inside is the same as the path outside. It is a sign that you understand. This space is sacred, even if it is humble. The gods watch through every doorway. The walls remember how you came in. Eating has its own ritual. You do not reach across the shared platter. You take from the portion nearest you. You chew with your mouth closed, slowly, always slowly. You do not speak with food in your mouth. You do not drain a bowl to the last drop unless it is offered that way. You leave a little, a sign that the host has given more than enough. Water is passed, not poured. Bread is broken, not cut. Salt is sacred. You do not touch casually. You do not embrace unless you are kin. A hand on the shoulder is a gesture of great familiarity. Not public, not often. In the market, hands stay close to the body. If you admire something, you gesture toward it with open fingers, but you wait for the vendor to pick it up. To grab is to claim, and claiming without permission is always seen. Even walking has its language. In crowded spaces, you keep your pace steady, your path direct. You do not weave or wander. You do not stop abruptly. To flow with the crowd is to show you understand your place in it. And when someone passes who carries more status, a priest, a judge, or even a high merchant, you step slightly aside. You lower your gaze. Not out of fear, out of rhythm, out of respect. In the temple district, all of this deepens. You walk more slowly. You speak less. You wash your hands at the basin before entering. You bow at the altar, even if you do not know which god it belongs to. You never turn your back fully on a shrine. You whisper prayers you do not quite understand, shaped phonetically by the lips of those around you. You offer a coin, a flower, a strand of hair, and you leave without looking back. There are no signs that tell you these rules. No scrolls listing what is right. You learn them by watching. You learn them by being watched. The city shapes your manners like water shapes stone, gently, patiently, and completely. Every gesture you make sends a message. Every pause you take becomes part of a conversation older than you. And when you forget, when your steps are too loud or your voice too eager, the correction comes softly. A look, a cough, a delay in response. You are not shamed. You are simply reminded. Here, life moves with grace, and grace moves in silence. The city teaches you not to demand space, but to find your place within it. And once you do, you are no longer a visitor. You are part of the rhythm. You learn quickly, not just by watching, but by where you are allowed to be. The city does not shout its expectations, but it moves you like a tide, gently, with purpose. whether you are seen or unseen, whether you speak or remain silent, whether your hands lift clay jars or press tablet seals, all of it depends on what you were born into and who you were born as. If you are born male in this world, your path begins early, and it stretches outward. From the time you can walk without falling, you are taught to follow the elders, to listen to the movements of the field, the animal, the calendar. Your world is measured in distance, between furrows in the soil, between market stalls, between home and temple. You are expected to work, to speak for the household outside the walls, to negotiate, to defend, to be seen. You rise early. You learn the weight of tools before the weight of philosophy. If you are born into a family of scribes or priests, your mornings may include clay tablets and styluses instead of plows and rope. But the principle is the same. The world must be shaped, understood, prepared. Boys learn to pray aloud. They learn to read stars and count offerings. They learn the names of the gods, the kings, and the punishments for failing either. If you are born female, your world begins smaller, but no less vital. You learn inside the walls. Your tools are the pots and the coals and the cloth stretched over your knees. You carry water, not scrolls. You spin thread, not tales. You may be taught to read prayers, but rarely to write them. And yet, you are the keeper of time in the home. You know how long the lentils must boil, how many heartbeats pass between, lightning and rain, when the moon bleeds, and what herbs to burn for safety. From girlhood, you are told what to cover and when. Your hair is not just your own. It is modesty, beauty, virtue. Unbound hair is for the very young or the very wild. When you marry, it will be braided, wrapped, veiled, not always hidden, but framed, the way one honors a precious object, by handling it only with care. Marriage comes early, sometimes before you feel the weight of adulthood in your chest. It is arranged, mostly, negotiated between fathers, uncles, sometimes mothers if the family is strong and trusted. You do not choose freely. But in some cases, you may speak quietly into the decision, a whisper offered to someone who loves you. And once the union is made, your role is clear. You tend, you birth, you bind the household together like mortar in the wall. But that does not mean invisibility. A woman who runs her household well is powerful. She keeps accounts, barters at the market, trains the servants, stores the grain. She may own land, inherit wealth, even bring cases before a judge, but only if she is strong, protected, wise in her words. Most stay near the hearth. The fire is both literal and symbolic. It is where food is made and warmth is held. It is where life begins. It is where the gods are honored when no one else is watching, and there are exceptions. There always are. Priestesses walk alone. Midwives are revered. Temple women carry mysteries on their tongues. Some even lead rituals that men must bow to. But these are not the norm. They are the quiet edges of a structure far older than reform. Here, gender is not just a role. It is an axis the world spins on, invisible but fixed. Men move outward, women root inward, and both are kept in place by law, by prayer, by expectation whispered in cradle songs. This does not mean you are unloved. In this world, love is expressed in bread, in braiding hair, in lighting the fire first for another. A father who teaches his daughter to grind barley without spilling is offering care. A mother who teaches her son not to speak over others is shaping him like clay. Emotions are not poured out, but poured into tasks. Tenderness lives in labor, and if you are born different, if you feel out of step with this structure, there is no word for it. Not yet. There are only glances, silences, Perhaps a life lived on the edge, in the shadows of temples, in the unnamed roles. Babylon does not always punish difference, but it does not name it either, so you live the role you are given. Or you bend it slightly, or you carry its weight with quiet defiance. Whatever path you walk, it is walked under watchful eyes, of your family, of your neighbors, of the gods. This is how it was. Not always kind, not always cruel, just old, just expected. Just Babylon. You begin to notice it not through speech, but through posture, the way some men stand straighter in the street, the way others bow without being spoken to, the way a figure in fine wool moves without looking side to side, as though the world parts for him automatically. You see it in the hands of a servant, folded at the waist as she waits for a command. You see it in the eyes of a guard, scanning faces like ledgers, counting debts that have not been paid. You feel it when you speak to someone and they do not answer, not out of rudeness, but out of rank. Babylon is not a flat place. Its streets may twist on a single plane. Its buildings rise only a few stories high, but its people live in layers. There are lines here that cannot be seen, but can always be felt. Class is not always about wealth. It is about lineage. It is about occupation. It is about permission. At the top is the king, a figure not simply of politics but of divine right. His word is law, not by argument or vote, but because it comes from the gods. He is more than a ruler. He is a vessel. His decisions are not debated. They are engraved in stone. If he says a wall must rise, it rises. If he says a man must fall, he vanishes. You will never stand near him. You may see his standard, or hear the horns as he passes, but you do not speak his name lightly. You do not question his silence. Below him, the nobles, landed families, priests, military leaders, advisors, each with power measured in titles, seals, and proximity to the throne. They wear their importance in silk belts and lapis amulets. They do not carry their own goods. They do not wait in lines. Their homes have inner courtyards and shaded pools. Their children are taught to read before they are taught to harvest. If you are summoned by one, you prepare for days. If you pass one in the street, you avert your eyes, or lower your body, just slightly. Then the scribes, the quiet power. They hold no armies. They swing no blades, but they carry styluses, and with them they record everything. Taxes, births, treaties, offerings. They are the memory of Babylon. If your name is not on their tablet, it might as well not exist. They are respected, but not revered. Known, but not always loved. You nod to a scribe, but you do not chat with him. His hands are always stained with clay. Merchants fill the middle, mobile, ambitious, occasionally wealthy, but never noble. They walk long roads. They speak many tongues. They bring goods, but also ideas. Sometimes they grow rich enough to dress like the elite, but they cannot marry into noble lines. They cannot speak in court without a representative. Their power is horizontal, spread across markets and docks and caravan trails, never reaching the heights of palaces. Then, the workers, the hands of the city. Farmers, potters, builders, bakers. They live in narrow homes, clustered near the river or the outer wall. They are born into labor and pass it down like heirloom grain. They may never speak to a priest. They may never touch silver, but they feed the city. They mend its broken things. They build its ziggurats. They carry its offerings. Without them, the rest would crumble. And lower still, the servants, the debt-bound, the enslaved. Those whose choices are few, whose names may be written, but whose stories rarely are. Some serve in homes, others in fields. Some were born into bondage, others were punished into it. Their eyes stay lowered. Their steps stay quiet, But they know every corner of the city. They know what happens in back rooms and shadowed kitchens. They see what others forget to hide, and if you cross a line, if you steal, or lie, or damage, something sacred, Babylon remembers. Punishment here is not only pain, it is ritual. It is display. A hand may be cut for theft, a tongue pierced for false speech. A man may be shaved and paraded, a woman veiled for shame. The laws are old, and they are not hidden. They are carved into stone pillars that stand in public squares. You can run your fingers along the grooves. You can feel the weight of justice in the stone itself. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a broken oath, but not all punishment is formal. Much of it is quieter. Exile from the market, exclusion from the temple, a door that does not open when you knock, a price that suddenly rises when you ask. The city has ways of unmaking those who offend its order, slowly like erosion. You are told, walk with purpose. Know your rank. Do not reach above your station, and do not bow where you should not. Even kindness must be measured. If you overstep, even in generosity, it may be seen as challenge. In Babylon, respect is not just a feeling. It is a structure, ancient, tall, heavy, and if you lean too hard against it, it will not bend, it will break you, and no one will speak your name again. You awaken before the sun has fully climbed into the sky. The air in your dwelling is cool, heavy with night's residue, dust motes drifting in what little light seeps through the narrow window slit. Your eyelids flutter open to shapes rather than details. The rough-hewn beams overhead, the curve of a clay pot in the corner, the faint glow of embers you cannot quite see but can smell. Smoke grown old, lingering in the silence. You lie a moment longer, letting your body remember its new shape. Your skin still tasting of sleep, of wool and straw pressed close throughout the night. At last, you rise. Your limbs feel weighted by the city's slumber, by the compact earth beneath your feet. The floor is uneven, cold until your soles warm it with hesitant steps. You find your robe, or rather the simple linen wrap reserved for mornings, and slip into it with care. You stand in the low doorway, one hand brushing, the rough frame as if testing whether the world outside is real. It is. The sound of water trickles softly in the distance. Whether from an open basin or somewhere along the river, you cannot tell yet. The scent of damp clay and faint charcoal lingers like a half-remembered dream. Outside, twilight yields to dawn. The narrow alleys lie silent, though you know that stillness masks the city's readiness. You crouch by a shallow basin carved into stone and pour cool water over your hands, letting it run between your fingers. You wash your face with gentle ritual. No towels, only the earthen basin and your own careful motions. And you whisper a fragment of a prayer you have learned by ear, not by sight. Your breath trembles in your chest as you press your palms together, as if greeting the new day itself. The sky brightens, shifting from gunmetal blue to the faintest rose. You draw a small clay vessel from its niche and pour oil onto a lamp wick. You cradle it in cupped hands, the flame sputtering to life with a hiss that startles you into full awareness. It is a single point of light in a world waking, and you hold it like a promise. You step back into the room, setting the lamp on a low shelf where its glow will chase away the darkest corners, and you feel the warmth spread, gentle but insistent. You wrap a coarse cloth around your shoulders, finding the weight of familiarity in its fibers. The smoke of the lamp curls upward, and you close your eyes, drawing in its scent, half incense, half soot, all memory. You inhale and exhale, matching. The pulse of the city just beyond your door. You are neither wholly at rest nor fully awake. You are poised between the two, as if held in balance by the soft light in your hand. When you step outside, The cool air brushes your cheeks, carrying scents of distant cooking fires, of damp stone, of herbs drying on a low roof. You pause to feel it, to let it seep into your bones like water into parched earth. The ground underfoot is clay, packed smooth by countless sandals. A stray piece of straw catches at your sandal's toe, and for a moment you straighten to remove it, mindful of the ritual of each movement. Here, everything matters. Even a stray bit of straw can shift the world's balance. Out in the alley, a neighbor emerges, a man whose house shares your wall. He carries a small woven basket, inside which you glimpse barley grains and figs. He bows his head slightly upon seeing you, and you return the gesture, tilting your chin in quiet greeting. No words pass between you, yet an entire conversation flickers in that shared breath. He moves on, and you inhale again, filling your lungs with the low hum of morning. Your next step takes you toward the communal courtyard, where water is drawn and shared. Each household has its own vessel, marked with simple symbols. You find yours, a jar etched with a stylized star, and lift the lid. You cup your hands and dip them into the cool water, letting ripples shift across the jar's belly. You pour water over your face again, then fill a smaller vessel that you carry home for cooking and ablution. You return it carefully, placing it beside the hearth, a silent offering to the day's first fire. Back inside, you prepare for the morning meal. You gather a handful of oats and barley, parched and popped like tiny pearls, and set them to soak, in water warmed by the lamp's flame. You crush a pinch of salt and some crushed cumin seeds between smooth stones, inhaling their sharp, earthy fragrance. With slow, deliberate motions, you kindle a small pile of coals in the hearth. The crackle is soft at first, then grows into a comforting murmur. You stir the grains with a wooden spatula, feeling their cool dampness give way to warmth, to steam, to life. As the porridge thickens, you breathe in the aroma of toasted grains. You fill a shallow bowl and sprinkle handfuls of pomegranate arils on top, bright as rubies against the pale stew. You sit cross-legged on the smooth floor, the bowl cradled in your palms, and you taste the first spoonful. The texture is gritty and smooth at once. The flavor is muted, seasoned by the soft salt and the faint sweetness of fruit. You chew each bite more slowly than seems necessary, as if delaying the moment when this morning ends and the day truly begins. Your gaze lifts to the shaft of light cutting through the doorway. The city is awake now. You can hear footsteps coming and going. You can hear the faint hammer of craftsmen somewhere in the distance. You can hear a child's cry and a dove's coo. Each sound is a thread in the morning's tapestry. You close your eyes and let them weave around you. You are present. You are calm. You are ready. The hearth is still warm when you return to it, its embers glowing faintly in a cradle of blackened clay. You retrieve a flat basket of barley loaves. Small, rounds of coarse grain pressed thin and scored with simple patterns, each one carrying the imprint of the baker's fingertips. The scent of toasted grain rises in gentle swirls, mingling with the wood smoke that lingers like an old friend. You brush away a few stray grains and cradle a loaf in both hands, feeling its rough surface yield slightly beneath your palms as if it remembers the warmth of the oven. You lift it to your lips and bite. The crust is firm, the crumb dry, and the flavor subtle, earthy, nutty, tasting of the fields at dawn. You chew slowly, savoring the texture, knowing that every bite carries the labor of farmers, millers, and bakers united in a single rhythm. Beside the loaves sits a shallow bowl of olive oil, pale gold and glossy. You dip the edge of your barley into it, letting the oil coat the bread's rough texture. The oil's flavor is silky and faintly bitter, like sunshine trapped in liquid form. You taste it carefully, letting the oil linger on your tongue before swallowing. You close your eyes and inhale the scent, a lush, grassy aroma that momentarily lifts you beyond the clay walls. When the loaves are nearly gone, you turn your attention to the preparation of the midday meal, an unhurried ritual in which every motion has purpose. You gather lentils, dried and smooth, in a small woven bowl. You rinse them in cold water, watching sediment swirl into the basin before it clears. You drain them by pressing the lentils gently against the basket's weave, then transfer them to a clay pot placed over the glowing coals. As the coals crackle, you pour in fresh water to cover the lentils by 2 finger widths, then add a pinch of salt and a few sprigs of chopped dill. The pot hisses softly as the water warms, and you lower the heat by shifting the pot to cooler embers, mastering its simmering breath. While the lentils awaken, you prepare vegetables for stew. A handful of onions chopped thin, their skins piling in papery curls on the wooden board. You slice a small squash into crescent moons, its flesh the color of candlelight. You crush a clove of garlic with the flat of a blade, releasing its pungent aroma, then peel and mince it carefully, mindful of the spice stinging your fingertips. You drop the onion into a second pot heated by the embers, stirring slowly until its edges soften and shine. You add the squash, then stir again, listening to the tender hiss as the vegetables meet flame and oil. Next comes the spice, cumin seeds winnowed from a small cloth pouch, sesame seeds golden as dawn, and a handful of coriander leaves torn roughly between your fingers. You sprinkle them into the pot, and the air shifts, every scent sharpening, layering until the aroma becomes nearly tactile, as if you could touch it. You stir again, sealing the flavors into the vegetable's warm embrace. Back to the lentils, now mellow. You skim the foam that rises to the surface and stir gently, watching the grains swell and soften. You add the vegetable mixture, fold it into the lentils, and taste a spoonful. The flavors are deep and resonant, each one speaking quietly but insistently, a chorus of earth, sun, and water. You adjust the salt with a tiny pinch, then let the pot rest over gentle heat while you arrange your eating area. You spread a mat of woven reeds on the cool floor near the doorway where the light is brightest. You set the pot on a low tripod, then place bowls and spoons carved from wood. You break a torn piece of barley bread and use it to scoop up a morsel of stew, no need for utensils, tending only to the edges of the bowl. You eat slowly, feeling your body drink in the warmth, each mouthful grounding you more deeply into this world. Between bites, you breathe in the city's midday sounds from outside, the clang of a carpenter's hammer, the distant murmur of prayer, the cry of hawkers in the market. You notice how the aromas drift through the open doorway, the stew's spice, the flatbread's smoke, the oil's lush bitterness. You close your eyes between bites, letting the scents settle on your senses like a soft cloak. Once the meal is finished, you pour water over your hands, washing away the stew's residue and the faint grit of barley. You wipe them on the rim of the mat, leaving behind curved palm prints like ephemeral calligraphy. You gather the bowls and return them to their places, stacking them with the quiet precision of ritual. You coax the embers back to life with a breath, preparing the hearth for the next time you will need its warmth. From the outside, the city has shifted. Shadows. Shorter, the sun higher, sounds more insistent. But within these walls, time moves at your pace. You take one last look at the empty pot and the scattered breadcrumbs, and you feel a gentle fullness that is more than hunger sated. It is connection to this place, its people, its rhythms, and the centuries of hands that have performed this same ritual before you. You rise, muscles eased by nourishment. The scent of spices still lingers on your fingertips, a reminder that in Babylon, food is more than sustenance. It is memory, community, ceremony. It is story told in flavors and textures, in heat and time and silence. And as you step back into the sunlit alley, you carry that story with you, one slow footprint at a time. You step into the late morning light and feel its warmth press against your back as you cross the threshold. The air carries the dust of brick yards and the faint echo of hammers striking metal, a steady pulse that quickens your own heartbeat. In Babylon, work is both ritual and necessity. There is no separation between living and labor. Every day unspools, in tasks that bind you to the earth, the river, the clay, and to one another. Each gesture, each movement, is part of a vast choreography performed without fanfare, always with reverence. If you are a laborer, your hands know the shape of tools long before your mind does. You grip the haft of a wooden adze, its edge sharpened, against a stone, and bring it down into the soft mud bricks laid in neat rows. The clay yields with a soft resistance, the scent of wet earth rising like a hymn. You feel the sun climb, your forearms flexing with each strike, your breath matching, the tool's rhythm. Between bursts of motion, you pause to wipe perspiration from your brow, using the back of your wrist so you do not smudge the clay across your face. One by one, the bricks take form, each stamped with the maker's seal, each destined to become part of a wall or a courtyard or perhaps even a temple. Elsewhere, in the weaving houses, women and men sit side by side before large wooden looms. Their fingers dance across threads of wool and linen, guided by feet that press petals with measured precision. The cloth grows inch by inch, a tapestry of muted colors, faded indigo, ash gray, ochre, woven in patterns passed down through generations. You run your hand along the emerging fabric, feeling its tight weave and imagining the robes, the wraps, the shawls that will soon rest on shoulders like quiet blessings. The shuttle clicks forward, then back, time measured in the beating of the weft against the warp, a gentle percussion that echoes the song of the river itself. In another quarter, merchants sweat beneath hastily erected tents. They unpack jars of oil and baskets of figs and piles of coarse wool, laying out their goods on low tables or spread directly on woven mats. Their voices rise in that careful half-sung tone, naming weights and prices and places of origin. You help measure grain in a clay bowl, filling it just to the rim, then tapping it gently with a stick so that the level settles true. You mark each exchange with a nod, handing over small bronze rings in payment before slipping the grain into a sack you carry on your shoulder. With each delivery, you feel the weight of commerce and the invisible threads of trade that link this city to distant lands beyond the seas and deserts. Meanwhile, the riverbank pulses with industry of a different sort. Boats of reeds and wood bob gently against the far shore. Fishermen cast nets into the silty water, their arms moving in arcs trained by years of repetition. You grip the net and drag it toward you, feeling the water's pull, hearing the faint slap of scales against wood as the catch tumbles aboard. You sort the fish, tossing the smaller ones back where they wriggle and glide before vanishing beneath the surface. The larger fish you stack in baskets lined with reeds, ready for the market or the temple kitchens. Your clothes are damp now, pressed to your skin by river spray, and your hair drips with the coolness of the water. Back in the residential lanes, chores unfold without fanfare but with measured purpose. Someone sweeps the courtyard with a broom made of bound reeds, its bristles whispering over stone and clay. You draw water for household cleaning in a pair of clay jars, their necks wet with condensation as you carry them. You empty the ashes from last night's fire into a small heap in the corner, stirring them with a stick until the embers fade. Then spread the gray dust where it can nourish the fields beyond the wall. You grind grain between stones, your arms moving in slow circles, until the flour glows pale and fine, ready for bread or porridge. Each movement is familiar, almost sacred, as though the simple act of tasks consecrates the space around you. And then there are the children who help without knowing it. They chase goats down the alley, their bare feet beating soft staccato rhythms against packed earth. They deliver small jugs of milk from neighbor to neighbor, their voices rising in laughter when the goats break free, and you too must chase them until they are safely tethered again. In the fields, they walk behind oxen, gathering stray stalks of barley, learning the slow patience of harvest. They mimic their elders, learning not only the motions but the meaning behind them, that work is not punishment but the very content of life. As the sun climbs higher, you pause to rest. Shade is rare, but you find a spot beneath a low arch where the world shifts into soft relief. You lean against cool stone and close your eyes, letting the sweat on your skin dry into grains of salt. You can feel the city moving around you, footsteps passing, carts carrying water, distant calls from the temple. You inhale deeply, tasting dust and spice and the faint comforting tang of sweat. You realize that labor here is never solitary. It is collective, communal, a series of hands passing the day from one to another in an unbroken chain. When you rise again, you feel the warmth of the city in your bones. You know that the day still stretches ahead. There are walls to build, cloth to weave, bread to bake, justice to record. But for this moment, you have touched the marrow of Babylonian life, the endless interplay of hands and earth, of breath and stone, of sweat and stone. You step back into the sunlit thoroughfare, the pulse of work beating beneath your sandals, and you carry it with you, the quiet knowledge that every labor, no matter how humble, is part of the city's grand design. You find that even in a world of relentless labor, there are moments set aside for breath, small pockets of time where the city pulses with a different rhythm. These are the hours after grain is stored and fires are banked, when the sun begins its descent and the heat loosens its grip on the clay streets. In these moments, you follow others into courtyards and open squares where color and sound rise, like incense, and weave a tapestry of joy. You enter a courtyard shaded by a canopy of woven reeds, its edges lined with low stone seats. In the center, a group of musicians sits cross-legged on a patterned rug. One holds a wooden lyre carved with curling tendrils. Another taps rhythmic patterns on a small drum made of stretched animal skin. A third blows into a reed flute whose notes fall like dew. You stand at the edge, leaning against the cool stone, feeling the music's slow heartbeat in your chest. You close your eyes and let the melody wash over you, gentle, unhurried, as if shaped by the river's own flow. Nearby, children chase one another in a game of tag, their laughter bright and unrestrained. You watch as a boy with dark curls darts past, ankles wrapped in cloth, and imagine the ground beneath his bare feet, textured by pebbles and stray palm fronds. You join in for a moment, lifting one foot, then another, stepping lightly across, the clay to avoid the hot patches. The children pause and look at you, curiosity and welcome in their eyes. You nod, and they beckon you to chase them again. And so you do, feeling the sweetness of movement unburdened by purpose, as though for a few heartbeats you have escaped the city's demands altogether. As the sky deepens to a soft rose, you make your way to a small gathering near a tiled fountain. Women and men sit on low benches, rolling dice made of bone in shallow bowls of sand. You watch the dice tumble, the tiny cubes clicking like soft rain. The players murmur encouragement or groan in defeat, their voices gentle and amused. You sit beside them, and a woman with braided hair passes you a bowl of seeds, watermelon seeds roasted until they crackle under your teeth. You pop one into your mouth and smile as the smoky crunch meets the soft warmth of your tongue. Between rounds, you trace patterns in the sand with a stick, circles, lines, symbols you do not understand but feel drawn to. The sand cools beneath. Your fingers in the dice game becomes a meditation, a simple dance of chance and camaraderie. Further along, men gather beneath the shade of a mud brick wall to watch a mock wrestling match. Two figures circle one another on a woven mat, eyes lowered, bodies poised. When they clash, the sound is muted, soft grunts and the rustle of cloth sliding against skin, yet the tension crackles like static. Each throw is measured, respectful, as though the wrestlers honor one another even in competition. You see the pride in each grip, the care with which they lift and guide the other's weight, and you feel the deep tradition that breathes through every movement, a tradition older than the bones beneath the clay. The crowd murmurs approval, and you join in, your voice low and warm, urging one or the other to victory. Celebrations rise with the turning of seasons, and tonight, perhaps, you find yourself in the glow of lanterns staked around a small plaza. The festival honors the rivers, swelling, its promise of life and abundance. You smell roasted lamb and honey-glazed dates carried on trays by children with woven baskets. You taste a spoonful of thick yogurt sweetened with pomegranate molasses, its tang both sharp and soothing. You watch as dancers in loose tunics move, in circles, their feet stirring dust that catches the lantern light and glitters like tiny stars. Their hands rise and fall in wave-like patterns, telling stories of water's journey from mountain spring to city lifeblood. Music swells. A frame. Drum thumps under the hand of a masked player whose breath rattles through a reed pipe. Firelight dances across faces, illuminating eyes bright with wonder. You find yourself swaying with the crowd, your body guided by instinct rather than intention. You feel connected to these strangers, to the festival, to the river both near and distant. Time feels suspended in the lantern glow. You hear the hum of conversation, the clink of bronze cups filled with date wine, the rustle of robes as people lean in to share words you only half understand. In one corner, a storyteller speaks in low, deliberate tones, tracing shapes in the air as he recounts an old myth of the moon goddess weeping for lost lovers. His voice is soft, almost a whisper, but you lean closer, pulled by the cadence. He speaks of stars born from tears, of nights that hold both sorrow and consolation. As he speaks, you imagine the night sky as it once was, dark and vast, untainted by torches or fires, a canopy beneath which love and loss both flourish. When the festival slows and the lanterns burn low, you slip away with others who wander, back to their homes. You feel the slight ache of muscles unused to dance, the sweet warmth of celebration settling in your chest. The air is cooler now, scented with jasmine and dust. The stars are hidden behind low clouds, but you sense their presence in the hush that follows the revelry. You stand for a moment in the empty plaza, the echoes of laughter still lingering like footprints. You breathe deeply, carrying the scents and sounds of the evening with you as you walk back down narrow alleys. You step lightly over stray petals and broken bits of clay, the world around you settling into quiet. Your heart remains full of images, the clack of dice, the curve of a dancer's arm, the flicker of lantern light on water, and as you return to your own threshold, you realize that leisure here is not frivolous. It is ceremony. It is renewal. It is the pause between breaths that gives meaning to the next inhale. You close your door behind you, carrying with you the echoes of festivity and the echo of your own laughter, soft, warm, and dreaming of another day. When the day's work and celebration have both receded to memory, you return home to the closest, things to sanctuary in Babylon, the spaces where family and hearth intertwine. A home here is not merely shelter. It is a living organism of walls and voices, of shared silences and whispered confidences. It is where love is shown in measured gestures, where bonds are forged in daily rituals, and where the tender weight of connection settles gently upon your chest. You step inside your dwelling, the low doorway framing warm lamplight and the muted susurrus of conversation. The air smells of last night's embers and this morning's cooking, of woven mats sun-dried and soft. Children's laughter drifts from the inner room, where the youngest lie on straw, their eyes bright as polished obsidian as they reach for dangling wooden toys carved into animal shapes. Their mother sits nearby, spinning flax fibers between her fingers, her posture relaxed but vigilant, as though she weaves care into the very threads of life. You pause at the threshold, resting your hand against the cool, baked clay of the wall. Within these contours, lives interlace. Parents whose fingers tighten around one another's across the low table where clay cups rest. Siblings who tease with soft grins, then exchange glances that speak of unspoken alliances. Grandparents who sit on low stools, their hair silvered, their eyes deep wells of memory, telling stories not just through words, but through the slightest arch of an eyebrow or the gentle tap of a cane against the floor. In one corner, a small hearth crackles with coals, its dancing glow illuminating the curve of a young mother's cheek. She comforts an infant whose cries rise in short, urgent waves. The mother hums an indistinct melody, one you have not heard before, yet recognize as belonging to centuries of lullabies passed mother to daughter, each one bearing the sorrow and solace of lives lived in this land. The hum calms the child, whose tiny fists relax, whose breathing softens to the rhythm of that ancient song. Nearby, a father returns from his day among brickmakers or scribes. He places his sandals carefully by the threshold, an unspoken ritual of respect, and steps into the inner room where his children gather. He removes a simple belt pouch from his waist, opens it, and draws out small clay tokens inscribed with the evening's accounts. His eldest daughter watches him with curious eyes, leaning forward so that her braided hair brushes his arm. He shows her the tokens, tracing the wedge-shaped marks in the clay with a thick finger, and she repeats them, pressing her own fingertip into soft clay. It is not play. It is lesson. It is inheritance. The knowledge that shapes society. The same knowledge that names the stars and measures the harvest. You move to sit beside them, and they welcome you with nods and smiles that carry no surprise. No surprise that a stranger would know their ways, because in this world, every guest carries the potential for belonging. You settle on a woven mat near the hearth, the coals kissing your skin with warmth. Sparks drift like tiny embers of memory, rising toward the low ceiling, and you feel their glow brush against your heart. Conversation here is soft, a current, beneath gentle words. They speak of the morrow's tasks, barley to grind, wool to wash, figs to pick. They speak of market prices, of festival preparations, of the priest's sermon that will come at sunrise. But beneath those practical words lies affection, in the way the mother pours water into a bowl and offers you a sip first, in the way the father adjusts his daughter's shawl so it drapes just right, in the way the siblings laugh at a shared joke before covering their mouths, for laughter, too, must be measured. You witness a small ritual of evening hospitality, the pouring of water over hands before eating, the offering of small pieces of flatbread passed one to another, the breaking of salt cakes shaped like tiny stars, each one symbolizing a wish for protection through the night. You partake, breaking off a piece and dipping it into honey. The sweetness slides across your tongue, reminding you that even amidst the austerity of clay and dust, the people of Babylon find moments to honor pleasure. In the soft shadows of the room, you see more than family bonds. You see the ways relationships extend beyond blood. You see the bond between neighbors who share firewood and news. You see the closeness between apprentices and masters as a potter's wheel turns smooth clay into vessels for water and wine. You see trust in the glances exchanged between market companions, in the quiet promise that each will guard the other's goods until the next dawn. As the lamp's flame lowers and the night's full silence descends, the family gathers around. A small altar niche, fresh flowers, jasmine, rose petals, are laid at the base of a carved stone relief of a protective goddess. The father pours a handful of flour into an offering bowl. The mother sprinkles tiny seeds. The children watch, quiet now, their curiosity softened into reverence. You feel the hush settle over the room like a blessing. They bow their heads. They press their palms together. The youngest mimics the gesture, fingers barely touching. You join them, closing your eyes. In that moment, You are neither guest nor stranger. You are part of this tapestry of care, of ritual, of tethered hearts. You sense the prayers released into the clay walls, into the night air, floating toward gods you do not fully know, yet feel watching with invisible kindness. When the ritual ends, the mother brings a soft cloth to wash each hand. She passes it, to the father, then to the children, then to you, a gesture of inclusion. Each person's hands carry the scent of oils and incense and the gentle dampness of evening blessings. You wrap the cloth around your fingertips, holding the warmth like a secret. You rise to leave. The family sees you to the threshold, their eyes reflecting candlelight. You step into the night's cooling air, heart light with connection. Behind you, the hearth's glow lingers like a promise. Ahead of you, the alley lies dark but welcoming, leading to the river, to the walls, to the tomorrow that awaits. You carry with you the quiet strength of home, of ties that bind without restraint, of love shown in simple gestures and measured moments. You carry the breath of these people, their stories etched in clay and heart, guiding you gently into the next chapter of this ancient world. You step into the temple precinct before dawn, guided by lantern light glimmering against clay brick. The courtyard is hushed, as if the very stones hold their breath in reverence. Incense coils drift through the air, shaped by countless flickers of flame, each wisp a prayer rising to unseen realms. You feel the hush deepen around you, a gentle pressure on your chest that settles doubt and invites wonder. This is the world of the gods in Babylon, a realm woven between mortar and breath, where the sacred and the mundane merge in rituals practiced every hour of every day. You first encounter a basin carved from white alabaster, its surface polished by centuries of hands. Near it, a line of worshippers moves slowly, dipping fingers into cool water and bringing them to their faces in silent purification. Each hand's dip creates tiny ripples, and each ripple is a promise of cleansing, not just of body, but of the mind's shadowy edges. You, too, cup water and wash your cheeks, feeling the early chill trail down your neck. You step back, palms pressed together, and inhale the incense tang that mingles with water's clarity. In that breath, you become part of the temple's flow. Beyond the basin, an avenue of columns leads to the inner sanctuary. You walk beneath their arching shadows, the columns carved with symbols of the moon, the sun, and the great serpent of the deep. You trace one with a fingertip, feeling the grooves shaped by countless palms seeking blessing. The priests here wear robes of pale wool, simple but immaculate, their heads wrapped in cloth to catch stray incense ash. They move without hurry, carrying copper bowls of oil for anointing. Their voices are low chants, rising and falling in ancient dialects that seem older than time. You do not understand the words, but you feel their cadence echo through your bones. In the heart of the sanctuary, the main shrine waits behind a curtain of woven reeds. Two priests draw it aside and reveal a statue of the city's patron deity, perhaps Marduk, stern and calm, carved in dark stone, eyes gleaming with polished lapis. The priests circle the statue, offering the oil they carry. Each pours a slow stream over the deity's feet, letting it bead and drip onto the clay floor below. You watch the golden oil flow, hear it patter softly, see how each drop seems to catch light before slipping into darkness. You feel the weight of centuries in that moment, the belief that oil can carry messages, that flesh can touch stone without fear, that gods accept offerings made by mortal hands. After the anointing, another priest steps forward with a slender torch. He lights a bundle of reeds soaked in resin, and the flame bursts to life with crackling heat. The torch is offered to the faithful, who pass it in a silent line, briefly raising it to their lips to inhale its smoky blessing. You hold the torch, warmth licking your fingers, and breathe deeply as the resin's aroma fills your lungs. It is sharp, resinous, green, a scent that seems to root you in earth even as it lifts you toward the divine. You close your eyes and imagine the gods breathing beside you, their presence not distant but threaded into every spark. Outside on the temple steps, you witness midday sacrifices carried in low clay bowls, figs skewered on reeds, small doves, with wings folded in peace, barley cakes stamped with sacred emblems. Each offering is placed gently on the stone, near the foot of the altar carved with images of starry heavens. A silent bell tolls, its sound hollow and long, and then the priests begin the libation. They pour water over figs until the juice spills, down the altar steps, then fill bowls with wine and barley beer, raising them to the sun in slow arcs. You feel their devotion as a physical force, pressing in on you like the temple's walls, making you part of something vast and unspoken. When the formal rites conclude, you move to a quieter courtyard where lay worshippers gather in smaller circles. Here, rituals are more personal. A mother ties a red thread around her child's wrist to ward off evil spirits, its color vibrating against the child's skin like a heartbeat. A young couple shares barley cakes as a pledge of fidelity, each bite sealing promises spoken in whispers that drift away before you can catch them. An elder presses a palm leaf against your forehead, tracing a symbol for protection, then smiles, with ancient kindness, as if passing on a secret older than Babylon itself. You feel the leaf's texture warm, the imprint lingering on your skin long after the elder has moved on. As twilight nears, the temple lawns become a maze of flickering lamps. Priests and patrons gather for a final hymn, voices weaving a tapestry of sound that seems to slow time itself. You stand among them, chest rising and falling with the group's breath, and you sense that every exhalation is an invocation. The sky above darkens, but here in this consecrated space, light remains. Lanterns glowing like captive stars, incense smoke curling toward moonlight, hearts lifted by ritual's hushed magic. When the hymn ends, no words are spoken. People disperse, in silence, slipping away like shadows into the night. You linger a moment, pressing your palm to the cool stone of the altar and feeling its pulse, the heartbeat of a world where gods and mortals entwine. Then you step out of the temple precinct, the scent of oil and incense and sacred water clinging to your clothes, and you carry that quiet sanctity with you into the city's sleeping streets. You move through Babylon as though every breath might betray a secret. Here, the world is not silent or blind, but rife with hidden voices, and you have been taught to listen. Every stray cat crossing your path, every patch of wind that rattles woven reeds, every curl of smoke from a cook fire is a message carried from the unseen realm. You learn to pause and pay attention, to hold each moment as if it might reveal whether fortune favors you today or has turned its back. In the early hours, you watch the sky for shapes. Clouds arranged like cuneiform signs are read by temple scribes with trained eyes. If a cluster of cloud puffs gathers east of the ziggurat, it might mean rain before the next market day, or perhaps a sudden shift in the king's favor. If the sun rises pink instead of gold, it hints of conflict along distant borders. You squint upward, tracing the clouds' slow drift, feeling your pulse match their rhythm, as if your own heart has become a weather vane. On the ground, you notice cracks in the pavement. A long fissure that runs north-south might warn of gossip spreading through the upper classes. A diagonal split portends familial discord. You kneel beside one such crack, running a finger along its jagged line, and imagine the upheaval it signifies. You stand and brush dust from your knees, carrying the memory of that omen like a whispered caution in your mind. Birds are among the most potent messengers. You hear the soft call of a dove before you see it, and you wonder if it carries news of peace or longing, A hawk circling overhead can augur victory in battles to come or the arrival of a wealthy caravan. If two birds falter in midair and fall, it might mean betrayal on the city walls, or that someone dear will betray trust before sunset. You pause under tree branches, scanning the sky until a breathless flock takes wing, then count their number. Knowing each bird adds to the riddle you must decipher. Two birds overhead can mean balance and harmony, but three can mean change in what you hold most dear. By doorways, you watch spittle on thresholds. A single drop of saliva flicked by a passerby is not a random act, but a deliberate casting of protection against malevolent spirits. If the droplet lands point first, it is potent, an enchantment that must be respected. If it lands flat, it is weak, and you might reinforce it with a scratch of salt in the corner of the threshold. You trace the residue lightly with your fingertip, honoring its purpose and learning that even the smallest gesture can carry great weight. Inside the home, you observe the hearth smoke. If it curls straight up like a pillar, it signals the god's blessing on the household. If it scuds sideways, it warns of mischievous spirits shifting through the rafters. You cup both hands near the smoke and inhale its scent, then bow your head so your hair brushes the curl, allowing it to carry its message to you directly. You learn that smoke is voice and wind is meaning, that every aroma speaks of balance or disturbance in the unseen world. In marketplaces, you watch the scales on merchant stalls. If one side dips slightly before the other, it is interpreted as the will of the divine. Perhaps the next customer will bring misfortune, or the trader must adjust their price lest the deal sour. You lean in to see the tiny tremor of the beam, then nod politely as though you have simply admired the craftsmanship. But inside, you catalog the wobble and commit it to memory, knowing that tomorrow's bargain might hinge on this subtle shift. When you share food, you learn to watch the seeds. A pomegranate split open to reveal an odd number of arils is seen as good fortune. Prosperity will fill your cup this season. If the number is even, it suggests a trickster spirit is at play, and you murmur a half-forgotten prayer to the river, goddess, to set things right. You hold the fruit in both hands and turn it slowly, counting in your head until the numbers align with the patterns of fate you have learned. Wounds and illnesses are also messages. A fever that drifts in the afternoon sun but fades at night might be the spirit of a river nymph trying to commune. A rash that appears in symmetrical patterns is regarded as a sign, either of right living or of imbalance in the households. Offerings. You place your palm over the eruption, feeling its heat, and whisper a phrase taught by healers to appease the unseen visitor. You have learned to read the city's signs, to move in measured rhythm with its people and its gods. Yet nothing binds a Babylonian soul more tightly than the myths that hum beneath everyday life. These are not mere tales told to children. They are living currents, winding through alley and palace alike, shaping thought as surely as the river shapes the land. To know the myths is to know the hidden architecture of the world itself. You sit by a low fire in a shaded courtyard, where a storyteller's voice drifts soft as wind through reeds. He begins without flourish, his words curling around you like smoke. He speaks of Tiamat, the great saltwater dragon whose coils first filled the cosmos. He speaks of Apsu, fresh water incarnate, whose slumber was broken when younger gods danced upon the primeval waves. And then he speaks of Marduk, the storm god chosen by the divine council to bring order from chaos, weapon in hand, thunder in breath, carving the world from Tiamat's broken shell. You feel the drama in the air as though lightning might strike, the courtyard's thatch at any moment, though the night remains still. As the storyteller traces Marduk's rise, you sense the power of creation in every syllable. He describes how earth was shaped from Tiamat's scales, how mountains rose like the spikes of a spine and valleys stretched like the hollow of a great hand. He tells you of how the sky was lifted from her ribs and the stars were sprinkled, like seeds across its dark canvas. You imagine each star as a word of promise, Each valley is a place for seeds to sprout new life. The tale breathes in you, not as history, but as the very bloodstream of reality. He moves on to softer legends, of Ishtar descending to the underworld to claim her love, only to find the gates barred and the land of the dead silent and still. You picture her, resplendent in her robe of gold and lapis, stepping through 7 gates and shedding an article of her beauty at each threshold until she stands bare, heart exposed to shadow. You feel her longing, her courage, her vulnerability, as though it were your own. And when she returns to the living world, restored and renewed, you breathe in hope itself. Then comes the story of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, the warrior king whose heart was hardened by the weight of his crown, and the wild man who ran with animals and drank from the river's edge. You hear how they clashed in battle, only to become brothers in blood and soul. You sense your own pulse quicken as they laugh under the moonlight, hunt the beast Humbaba in the cedar forest, and gaze in awe at the bull of heaven sent by a jealous deity. You feel the ache of their friendship when Enkidu falls, struck down by divine decree, and the quiet despair that drives Gilgamesh to seek the secret of eternal life. You imagine his journey to distant mountains, his passage through dark waters, his confrontation with Utnapishtim, the ancient survivor of a great flood. The tale sweeps you along, wrestling with mortality and meaning, and you wonder whether you, too, might chase forever into the edges of the world. These legends are told and retold, each storyteller weaving their own voice into the pattern, softening some edges, sharpening others. In some versions, the bull does not collapse so easily but charges through the city gates, scattering merchants like chaff. In others, Ishtar's heart breaks so deeply that the skies weep rain for 7 days. You realize that the city itself shifts beneath these variations, as though each telling reshapes clay walls and reed huts. Children recite fragments at the water basin, splashing one another as they speak. Bakers inscribe tiny figures of Gilgamesh on date cakes during festivals. Priests chant the primordial verses each dawn, believing that their words sustain the balance of creation. Even merchants invoke the myths when they bargain. May your trade be as prosperous as the fields Marduk created. May your house stand firm like the ramparts that held back Tiamat's fury. At night, you dream their images. The rattle of thunder becomes Marduk's hammer. The distant cough of wind across rooftops becomes Tiamat's hiss. You awaken, heart pounding, to find dawn's light filtering through your reed curtains, and you swear you can still taste the cedar resin from the forest where Gilgamesh and Enkidu once stood side by side. By morning, the myths have blended with reality. You walk the same streets where they were born, passing beneath the same walls fashioned from primal chaos. You carry their echoes in your blood, and your steps follow the outstretched paths they carved through time. For in Babylon, the world was first spoken into being by the gods' voices, and every word you trace in clay or air is part of that ancient song. You rise from the storyteller's circle, chest alight with images, and step back into the day, knowing that each whispered myth is a thread that connects you to every soul who ever believed, every hand that ever shaped, every heart that ever trembled before the vastness of creation. And you carry those threads with you, weaving them into your own story as you move through this timeless city. In Babylon, sickness is never merely physical. It is a disturbance in the smooth weave of body, spirit, and the unseen world. When you awaken with a cough that rattles in your chest like distant chariot wheels, or a fever that drapes your limbs in heat, you know the remedy must address more than the flesh. You step into the courtyard of a healer's home, where clay jars line. Low shelves and bundles of dried herbs hang from reed rafters like incense you cannot burn. Here, healing is a ceremony, part science, part magic, part prayer. The healer greets you with measured calm. Her hands are steady, her eyes gentle. She invites you to sit on a woven mat before a low table carved with cuneiform blessings. 1. It rests a shallow basin of water scented faintly with willow bark and juniper berries, a mortar and pestle of polished stone, and a slim reed stylus tucked beside a small tablet on which she will note your pulse and symptoms. You settle into a cross-legged position, and she bows her head slightly, an unspoken promise to do no harm. First, she listens, not only to your words, but to your voice's timbre, the cadence of your breath, the weight of your sighs. She places her fingertips against your wrist, feeling the rhythm of your pulse as though reading a tablet's inscription. She closes, her eyes and inhales gently, discerning the unique scent your illness carries, a faint tang of bile, a dryness like scorched earth, a sweetness that hints at phlegm. Each scent, she explains in measured tones, corresponds to an imbalance within. Too much heat produced by the heart, too much dampness lodged in the lungs, too little movement in the blood that must flow like the Euphrates itself. Her next gesture is to reach for clay tablets, small broken fragments inscribed with remedies passed down through generations. She reads one aloud in a whispery voice. For fevers, mix honey and crushed myrrh with water from a clay jar inscribed with the name of Gula, goddess of healing. She uncorks a jar of honey, its amber thickness catching the lamplight, and crushes. Myrrh tears between her fingers until they crumble to powder. She stirs the honey and myrrh into the basin of water, stirring in a circle as though tracing the path of the sun across the sky. You inhale the mixture's warm aroma, bitter and sweet, and she guides you to sip slowly, holding each drop against your tongue so that the medicine's words might etch themselves into your flesh. Then comes the fumigation. She lights a small bundle of rue and thyme, letting the smoke rise in a spiral that she directs with her hand. You lean forward, allowing the fragrant haze to drift into your lungs. She murmurs an incantation, invoking the protective spirits believed to dwell in the smoke, spirits who will escort disease out of your body and ward off its return. The smoke curls around you like a cloak, and you feel its coolness soothe the fire in your chest. When the internal remedies are done, she attends to your body's exterior. She pours oil infused with poppy and sesame into her palms, warms it with her breath, and massages it into your shoulders and chest in slow, circular motions, each circle tracing the shape of the ziggurat steps, guiding energy upward. The oil's texture is rich, and as it sinks into your skin, you feel knots of tension loosen. She listens again to your pulse, now quieter, more even, before nodding, her expression soft but assured. Her final act is to bind a charm around your neck, a small clay amulet stamped with the image of Gula's dog, believed to carry the goddess's healing power. She threads it on a strip of linen and ties it so it rests against your sternum, close to your heart. She blesses it with oil and a whisper, an unspoken prayer that disease will find its way out and not return. You press a hand to the amulet, feeling its cool weight, and you know it will warm with your body heat, carrying its blessing deeper into you. Outside, you find yourself breathing more easily. The world seems slightly brighter, the courtyard's shadows less threatening. You gather water from the basin and rinse your hands, watching drops form ripples that carry faint traces of myrrh and rue. Each ripple is a reminder that healing here is never swift. It is gradual, unfolding over days of diet, rest, and ritual repetition. At home, you follow her instructions. You boil water with dried pomegranate rinds and sip it before sleep. You breathe in steam from a pot of boiled fennel and coriander. You rest on your straw mattress beneath a blanket re-dyed with safflower to signify renewal. You repeat the whispered prayers she taught you, feeling their cadence settle deep in your belly. You wrap the amulet in cloth at night, pressing it close to your chest as if holding a secret guardian. You understand now that healing in Babylon is not just about curing the body. It is about restoring harmony between earth and spirit, between fire and water, between the living and the gods. It is about acknowledging the fragility of life and the strength found in ancient practices. Each remedy carries the weight of hands that mixed, crushed, whispered, and bound before you. Each ritual is a bridge between pain and relief, between fear and hope. When you wake days later, if the cough has lifted, if the fever has broken, your gratitude is quiet but profound. You return to the healer's courtyard, offering a small gift of dates and bread. She receives it with a slight bow, her eyes reflecting the soft pride of one who has guided you back to life. You leave carrying not just restored health, but a renewed sense of belonging, to a world where medicine is woven from earth, breath, and belief, and where every healing is a story passed from heart to heart. You learn quickly that in Babylon, death is not an ending but a gateway. The border between the living and the departed is as thin as reed paper, and each breath you draw brings you closer to both worlds. When a life slips away, the household does not collapse into silence. Instead, it hums with careful rituals meant to guide the deceased across the threshold and shield the living from the thin blades of sorrow and restless spirits. At the moment of passing, the body is laid out on a low bier within the family home. The air grows thick with rosewater and myrrh. Soft mats are spread beneath to catch the final exhalations. A close relative, often the eldest daughter, brings fresh water to wash the hands and feet, then anoints the hair with oil infused with frankincense, its resinous scent curling into corners like a whispered farewell. The deceased's eyes are closed by gentle fingers, and a small piece of lapis is placed upon each lid, a token for the journey, a link between earth's blue clay and the heavens above. Friends and neighbors enter in measured procession, each carrying a small wooden tablet inscribed with blessings and pleas for safe passage. They bow their heads at the threshold, stepping lightly over the bier so as not to disturb the silence. Inside, voices are hushed to a whisper, not out of fear, but out of respect. They circle the body, murmuring songs of remembrance, lines that recall kindnesses given, fields tilled, bread shared. The cadence of these laments becomes a bridge, guiding the dead toward the great river of the underworld, where final judgments echo in caverns of shadow. Once the songs conclude, the body is gently wrapped in layers of linen, each cloth dyed, in the family's colors, deep ochre for hearth, soft gray for memory, azure for the sky that watched over the departed. Amulets of clay and metal are tucked among the folds, a dog's image to lead the way, a carved apple to offer sweetness. To the judges, a small vial of oil to light the path. The arms are crossed over the chest in a posture of rest, as if the deceased is merely pausing before a long journey. Outside, under the rising sun, the cortege moves toward the necropolis, a quiet field of low mounds beyond the city's walls. The earth here is soft, crumbled by the footsteps of generations. You walk behind the bier, the hush broken only by the soft scrape of sandals and the distant murmur of the living world. When the grave is dug, a simple shaft lined with reed mats, the linen bundle is lowered with reverent solemnity. A final fragment of bread and a jar of water are placed beside the body, sustenance for the traveler in the realms below. The mourners step back, forming a loose circle around the grave. A priest or elder throws handfuls of earth over the linen, each handful a promise that the living will remember. The earth settles, soft at first, then firm. A small clay marker is set at the head, a disc stamped with the deceased's name and the date, measured by the cycles of the moon. You press your finger into the cool clay, feeling the impressions of wedge and line, and sense that even this marker is woven into the city's memory. Grief in Babylon is expressed through endurance rather than display. The family returns home, where they vanquish mirrors for 7 days. No reflections to remind them of their own changing faces. They wear mourning shawls of undyed wool, their texture coarse against tender skin. They refrain from music, from laughter that might jar the spirits. Their food is plain: barley porridge without oil, dates without honey, water without wine. In this simplicity, they honor the loss, each day offering measured remembrance until the soul is believed to have fully crossed into the other realm. But death is not only sorrow, it is also continuity. On the seventh night, a small feast is prepared, not to celebrate, but to commemorate. The family offers bread cakes shaped like stars, cups of beer poured into the earth and left at the feet of the departed's marker. They speak the name aloud, inviting the spirit back for a moment of communal remembrance. You stand beside them as they call, voice low but clear, telling stories of the deceased's kindness, humor, and the gentle traces they left behind. In that night's darkness, you feel the presence of ancestors all around, countless souls, whose echoes shape the living world. Afterward, life resumes its rhythm. The mirrors return, music returns, laughter returns. But the necropolis stands always at the city's edge, a reminder that every life is part of a grander tapestry. You pass the burial mounds and see the small clay markers shimmering in the sun, each one a story saved from oblivion. You pause to touch one, feeling the ridges of someone else's name, and you realize that in Babylon, memory is sacred. Death does not erase, it secures a place in the world's design. As evening falls, you light a lamp at a household altar, a final gift of light carried to the departed. You whisper a blessing, not to banish sorrow but to transform it into continuity. And you understand that here, the living and the dead share clay beneath their feet, breath in their lungs, and stories in their hearts. You first meet him at the edge of the market, where the city's pulse slows to a curious hum. He moves with a gait that is neither measured nor hurried, but somewhere between a stumble and a dance, as though the stones themselves guide his steps. His tunic is patched in mismatched fabrics, each square a fragment of stories you cannot name. He wears a wreath of reeds atop his head, an absurd crown that tilts whenever he tilts, suggesting some unseen weight beneath the laughter of passers-by. He is the local fool, the outsider, the trickster, and your heart opens a little wider when you see him. He does not speak first. He tilts his head, palms upward, offering some invisible gift. You cannot tell whether he asks for coins or simply for attention. Behind his eyes, though, there is a spark not of madness but of keen observation, and when you finally offer him a nod, he bows so deeply you fear the crown will slip into the dust. Then he stands and watches the market go by as though every gesture were a play acted out for his secret amusement. He notices the sheen on the fish scales, the pattern in a merchant's knot, the way a child tugs at a mother's sleeve when the mother believes she is unseen. You realize he sees what most of you overlook. When he does speak, his voice is soft but deliberate, offering riddles that curl around your mind like smoke. He may ask you whether a sheep that walks backward counts time differently, or whether the river ever forgets the banks it carried. You tilt your head in response even as a crowd gathers to watch, and the fool smiles, revealing teeth that glint like chipped ivory. His words seem absurd, but later, when you walk away, they uncoil in your thoughts, each question revealing hidden truths about your own assumptions. Sometimes you find him at the fountain, gathering water in small cups and pouring it back into the basin, watching the ripples form concentric rings. He murmurs something you cannot catch, perhaps an apology, perhaps a benediction, then moves on to the next cup, the next drop. He is not mad, exactly. He is more than sane, in a way, because he dares to treat the world as if it is both toy and teacher, a stage where every gesture can be read for meaning. By midday, he drifts to the temple door, where priests pause in their chants to observe him. He carries a clay tablet etched with symbols that do not belong to this place. He traces them gently with a fingertip, as though recalling a dream, then offers the tablet to the first priest he meets. The priest takes it, studies it, and finds nothing familiar. The fool smiles again, turning his head so his reed crown sways, and walks away without demand. You watch him go, wishing you could read the symbols too, or at least believe that they matter in some secret ledger of the divine. Children follow him in wonder, weaving between his patched feet, mimicking the way he dips a toe in a puddle as though it were sacred water. You see the irony. In a city that prizes order and rank, this gentle jester moves freely, unbound by etiquette, slipping in and out of spaces that remain closed to others. He is both embraced and edged out, laughed at and revered, because he carries a mirror that shows every face its hidden lines, every life its absurdities and its grace. In the evening, you find him on a rooftop where the sky is broad and dust-laden. He sits on the parapet, knees drawn to his chest, and watches the sun sink behind the distant walls. He turns toward you and offers a single reed he plucked from a gutter, smooth and hollow. He hands it as if it were a treasure, then takes your hand and presses the reed to your palm, letting its echo hum against your skin. You hold it to your ear and hear nothing but the quiet of your own heartbeat. The fool laughs softly, as though the reed whispered your truth, then slips the crown from his head and sets it beside you. You sit with him as the sky dims, and in the hush you realize that he is neither king nor clown. He is a bridge between worlds, the familiar and the strange, the sane and the surreal, the life you led before crossing into Babylon and the life you inhabit now. In his riddles, you hear the city speaking to you, reminding you that order is a story we tell ourselves, that wisdom can be found in laughter as much as in silence. When he stands to leave, you reach to touch his shoulder, and his garment brushes your fingers like a whisper. He nods and steps toward the stairway that winds down into darkness. You linger on the rooftop long after he disappears, the reed crown beside you. It's hollow, core reminding you that some truths sound only in empty spaces. And in that emptiness, you find room to believe that perhaps you, too, have become part trickster, part seeker, wandering the ancient streets with questions better than answers. The palace courtyard is alive with ritual before the city breathes, fully awake, but your eyes are drawn not to banners or bronze vessels, but to the man who stands at its center. He is neither young nor old, but poised in that perfect moment where experience and expectation meet. His robe gleams of white wool, bound at the waist by a belt of braided gold threads that catch the dawn light and scatter it across the marble floor in quiet sparks. He holds no scepter, yet every gesture is command. He is king, judge, and high priest all at once, and in Babylon these roles intertwine like the river's twin arms. You stand among petitioners, farmers seeking relief. From poor harvests, merchants requesting trade licenses, widows asking for land rights. Each approaches and bows low, forehead nearly touching the ground, eyes cast down. When their words come, they come in hushed tones, a soft echo beneath the vaulted ceilings. The hearing is swift, a nod here, a flick of a finger there, and their fate is decided. No warrant is read aloud, no jury convened. The king's will is both lawgiver and judge, his voice the final seal upon every case. Yet you sense in him not caprice, but a deliberate gravity, an awareness that every word must uphold the delicate weave of society. He surveys his court with calm indifference, though you feel the weight of his gaze as surely as a stone pressed to your shoulder. The stones themselves seem to pay homage, polished black basalt tiles that reflect his figure as though he stands at the axis of creation. At his back, a low dais carved with bas-reliefs of gods and heroes anchors him to heaven and earth alike. He is their mortal echo, the living link between mankind and the divine. The priests who stand beside him whisper in his ear, reports of temple offerings, omens from the previous night, the sequence of stars overhead. He listens, silent, his fingers brushing the carved symbols on his armrest, as though reading secrets only he can decipher. When the morning's cases conclude, he moves to the great hall, an open space ringed with columns hewn from white limestone. The scent of incense drifts from braziers at each pillar's base, forging invisible corridors of smoke that guide his path. He walks slowly, deliberately, sandals soundless on the stone, and courtiers part before him like reeds before the river's current. He greets each with a curt nod, never lingering, yet you sense that each exchange is deliberate, an investment of authority meant to be felt, even if unspoken. A general bows and is entrusted with the city's southern gates. A scribe kneels and receives a new seal for the royal archives. A merchant is granted rights to import cedar from the distant mountains. Each touch of his hand, each glance of his eye, seals ambition, cements alliances, or cautions against overreach. Seated again, he turns his gaze to you, just for a moment, but long enough to unsettle the marrow in your bones. You realize that such power does not reside in banners or armies alone, but in the quiet confidence of a man who knows his will shapes worlds. His crown is simple. A band of beaten gold, inscribed with tiny cuneiform blessings, worn close to the skull so that power radiates from within, not from adornment alone. His hair is trimmed evenly, his beard squared and oil-darkened, a face curated for both reverence and recognition. He does not smile, yet his lips hold the memory of laughter that once was and may yet be again. Later, you see him in the temple courtyard, before the carved statue of the patron deity. He kneels on one knee, bowing so his crown nearly brushes the stone floor. He offers a bowl of water, then a cup of milk, then a date cake stamped with the royal seal, each placed at the deity's feet with precise reverence. His voice rises in melodic chant, words you cannot understand, but whose rhythm you know to be the heartbeat of the city's prayer. You feel the hush settle, as though the gods lean in to listen. In that sacred moment, he is not king or judge, but servant, hands folded in awe before powers far older and vaster than any earthly crown. By midday, he retreats to the shaded galleries of his private quarters. Here, advisors and envoys wait with boundless patience. He listens to each report, on grain stores, on border skirmishes, on temple revenues, then deliberates with the measured care of a scribe crafting the perfect tablet. His counsel is concise, his decisions swift, yet every decree is recorded, every promise weighed. You glimpse the scrolls piled at his elbow, tokens of the city's lifeblood, knowing that the true weight of his rule lies in the balance he maintains between edict and mercy, between tradition and progress. As evening falls, he emerges on a balcony overlooking the Tigris. The sun sets in a blaze of copper and rose, and the river reflects the sky's farewell like molten glass. He stands alone, crown off, robe loosened at the neck. In the fading light, he seems less deity than man, contemplative, vulnerable, caught between the burdens of power and the longing for the simple breath of dusk. You watch him as the first stars emerge, mapping the heavens that once guided the ancient myths. He lifts a hand in silent blessing, both over the city and over you, the outsider who witnessed his hidden grace. And in that instant, you understand that power in Babylon is more than command. It is stewardship, an unspoken pact between ruler and ruled, between mortal and divine. It is the slow forging of order from the raw clay of ambition. It is the steady pulse that keeps the city's heart beating. You turn away as the night deepens, carrying the echo of his presence like a silent vow, that even the mightiest are bound to the world they serve, and that every crown, no matter how bright, must one day bow before the gods whose whispers shape its fate. You find him in the furthest fields beyond the city walls, where the soil is heavy with river silt and the air is tinged with the scent of germinating grain. He is not wealthy. His tunic is patched, his sandals worn thin, but he stands with steady shoulders as if anchored to the land itself. His hands are calloused, his eyes steady, and when he looks at you, you feel the quiet pride of someone who knows the world by its weight and texture. He greets you with a nod, then returns to his work, bending over furrows furrowed by oxen. The plowshare slices through damp clay with a whispered rip, and he guides it with one hand while he holds a leather strap in the other. The sun is low, still cool enough for comfort yet brightening with promise. You step beside him, pressing your foot into the soft earth and feeling its give beneath your sole. He pauses to let you find the furrow's rhythm, each step measured by the plow's heartbeat, each breath matching the land's pulse. When the field is plowed, he kneels and scatters barley seed by hand, letting each grain fall like a small prayer. He murmurs an old saying, words about patience and faith, yet his tone is neither boastful nor sorrowful, only matter-of-fact. You repeat the motion, though your grains land unevenly, and he reaches out to correct your scatter with gentle guidance, his fingers brushing yours with a warmth that speaks of kinship between earth and hand. After the seeds are sown, he leads you to a narrow ditch where irrigation water trickles from a raised canal. He kneels again and cups his hands, letting the water spill over his palms before guiding it to the roots of the young shoots. "Without water," he says, voice soft. Against the field's quiet, the seed is but a promise. You feel the water's chill and its insistence, the way it coaxes life from grain that would otherwise lie dormant beneath dust. He stands and wipes his brow with the back of his forearm, revealing a simple amulet tied around his wrist, a carved piece of flint bearing the image of a fish. He explains that it honors the river god, whose mercy makes the fields fertile. He gestures to the canal, then to the distant bend of the Euphrates, and you sense his faith is as practical as his labor, both rooted in cycles seen and unseen. When the work in the fields is done, he rests against a low, mud-brick wall, loosening his belt and offering you a flask of water sweetened with date syrup. The journey from the city's market to these fields can be long, and he treats each traveler as he would a friend. His hospitality neither forced nor generous, simply natural, like a tree offering shade. You take a sip and taste the sun's warmth, the tang of metal from the flask's rim, the faint hint of dust settled in the grooves of your throat. He speaks of seasons, of how each year brings its own character. "Last year," he says, "the river rose too early and the seed was flooded before it could root. We lost half the fields. But my neighbor to the south, he had a clay barrier along his trench, and he saved his grain. He taught us how to build stronger embankments." His tone holds no bitterness, only the recognition that survival is woven from shared knowledge. You imagine the muddy banks, the hastily laid bricks, the anxious faces watching water lap at freshly turned earth. He tells you about the harvest's festival, how, once the grain is reaped, the entire village gathers beneath the moon to winnow. The chaffin share stories by firelight, how the old men recite the names of ancestors who first tilled these fields, and the women bring flatbreads studded with sesame. He smiles, eyes distant, as if tasting those evenings, the sweetness of wine, the crackle of flames, the laughter of children tossing grain in the air to watch it spiral like dust motes in sunlight. You ask him what he fears most, and he pauses, watching a lizard slip across the wall's sun-baked surface. "Drought," he says at last, "and neglect. If we forget to honor the land, to mend the walls, to keep the channels clear, the earth will turn against us." He rests his hand on the mud wall, feeling its warm hardness, its slight give, and you realize he treats the land as something alive, something that demands care and commands respect. As the sun sinks and the field's shadows lengthen, he stands and stretches, the soreness in his muscles speaking of dignity more than hardship. He picks up the reins of the oxen, guiding them back to their pen, and you follow, walking between beasts that seem as calm as their master. They move with a measured gait, their steps echoing the plow's rhythm in reverse. When you reach the small cluster of homes by the canal, he pauses at the threshold of his dwelling, a modest structure of mud brick and thatch. He turns to you, eyes steady with gratitude, and says, "This is where life begins and ends, where we measure fortune by fullness of storehouses and warmth of hearth." He steps inside, closing the door with reverent care, and you stand in. The cooling dusk, the fields behind you bathed in twilight's hush. You leave him there, his silhouette receding into the doorway's glow, and you carry with you the quiet strength of one who binds himself to earth and water each day. In his story is the heartbeat of Babylon's backbone, the laborer who shapes the world from clay and seed, whose voice is as steady as the river's flow, whose faith in the land becomes the faith that binds an empire. He carried the world in his pack before it ever reached the city walls. Your first glimpse of the merchant is at dawn, as he emerges from a small caravanserai near the northern gate. His robes are finely woven linen, so pale they almost glow in the early light, yet are dust-flecked from weeks on the road. Over one shoulder hangs a leather satchel bulging with wares, carved ivory combs from the distant coastline, bolts of dyed wool from desert caravans, glass beads so translucent they capture the sunrise like fragile gems. He strides with purpose, each step measured as though the road's miles still echo in his bones. He pauses by a shallow well to wash his hands, using water drawn in a chipped clay jar. You watch as he kneels, pouring water over his palms and letting it spill down his wrists. In that simple ritual, a nod to cleanliness and custom, he transforms himself from traveler to city dweller, bridging two worlds with a single breath. He wraps a soft cloth around his hands before adjusting the satchel's strap and continuing toward the marketplace. The market yawns awake in layers. First, the odor of spices, sumac, coriander, fenugreek, drifting on a breeze. Then the murmur of stallholders arranging dates, onions, and pale cheeses on woven mats. The merchants who cater to locals gossip in low tones about yesterday's prices, while larger traders unpack pottery and metalwork from crates. You follow the merchant as he threads through the stalls, greeting each vendor by name and offering small presents, a handful of frankincense, a ceramic bead carved in his homeland, to cement alliances formed over many seasons. He stops at a stall piled high with copper bowls. The bowl's surface gleams with recent polishing. He lifts one, feeling its weight, turning it in his palms as though weighing hidden currents. He listens to its ring when tapped gently, eyes closed for a moment, discerning the metal's purity. Then he sets it down and auctions a price, softly with respect, before leaving a token of silver rings on the mat. The vendor nods, smiling at the familiar courtesy, and wraps the bowl in linen for the merchant's satchel. Next, he moves to a row of spice jars. He dips a small reed into ground saffron, sniffs deeply, and then tastes a single strand. He evaluates its color, its aroma, its flavor's brightness, as though each quality carries the story of harvest and trade winds. He discards the reed into a clay ash bowl, then tells the spice seller that his price is fair, though he has checked it against caravan records from 3 kingdoms west. The seller bows and passes him a small package of the saffron, tied with red thread as a sign of gratitude. Around midday, he negotiates a deal for fine linens brought from the city's dye houses. He inspects the fabric's weave, running a fingertip along its length, then compares it to swatches he carries, samples from the coast, from mountain workshops, from distant islands. He measures the cloth's worth not only in its texture but in its provenance, whether the dye stuff came from pomegranate rinds or madder roots, whether the loom was woven by temple guilds or by traveling artisans. Each detail shifts the price, yet he never rushes. His bargaining unfolds like a ceremony, respectful of craft and custom. As the sun slides toward its zenith, he rests in the shade of a date palm, unwrapping a small meal. Barley cakes, dried, figs, a flask of cool water. He eats slowly, mindful of flavor and fuel for the afternoon's dealings. He shares his bread with a nearby scribe, who offers advice on recent tariff changes in return. Their voices are low, almost conspiratorial, discussing markets beyond the city's walls, across the sea, along the desert routes, through passes, where camels stretch the caravan lines like living bridges. In the afternoon, he inspects the weights on his own scales, ensuring they remain true. With a careful hand, he adjusts the brass counterweights, then tests each one against standardized rings stamped by the Merchant Guild. He fills his satchel with small vellum scrolls detailing contracts he has written in his own hand, agreements to deliver spices at next month's festival, to sell pottery at the Northern Temple Market, to barter glass beads for tin imported from mountainous regions. He seals each scroll with wax and a pressed signet ring, the imprint a guarantee backed by his reputation. By late afternoon, the market's energy shifts. Bargains are sealed, ledgers balanced, offerings reserved for temple stalls. The merchant gathers his satchel's straps, now heavier for the day's acquisitions, and prepares for the journey out of the city. Near the western gate, he exchanges a final bow with the gatekeeper, offering a small pouch of silver dust for the god of thresholds, as he calls it. The gate opens, and he steps onto the road again, his pace steady, his gaze already on horizons beyond. As you watch him depart, you realize the merchant's true craft is not in what he carries, but in the trust he weaves between hands, hearts, and horizons. Each transaction binds him closer to Babylon and to the world beyond, a living thread of commerce, curiosity, and connection that sustains empires as surely as rivers sustain fields. And in his departing silhouette, you glimpse the pulse of a city that thrives on exchange, both of goods and of stories carried on dust-laden winds. In a half-lit inn, he unburdened his soul like a merchant unwrapping silk. You find him at dusk inside a humble caravanserai, its courtyard hushed save for the burble of a well and the soft rustle of goats tethered nearby. His arrival was marked by the creak of a gate and the distant clip-clop of hoofbeats. He carries no satchel brimming with wares, nor does he wear the dust-flecked robes of a trader. Instead, he wears a simple woolen cloak stained by road sweat, and you sense in his gait the weight of something heavier than grains or gems, an unspoken confession waiting to be released. He sits by a low clay table, where a solitary oil lamp pools its glow in golden rings. Across from him, you settle onto a reed mat, curious but silent. He captures his cloak's edges in one hand, as though it were a talisman against the world's demands, and he exhales, a breath that carries the miles of desert and mountain behind him. The lamp's flame flickers, casting shadows that dance across his lined face, revealing eyes that have seen both marvel and sorrow in distant lands. He begins in a whisper, as though afraid his own words might vanish if spoken too loudly. I have walked beyond the cedar forests of the north, and I have slept beneath stars so bright they seem to flicker with their own breath, he says. His voice is soft, deliberate, each syllable an offering. I have crossed plains where the wind carries the scent of hyacinth, and I have knelt before kings who wore their power like a weight too great for any soul. You listen, the lamp's scent of oil intertwining with the memory of distant blooms and the hush of mountain winds. He pauses, tracing a circle in the dust with his fingertip, then looks up, meeting your gaze. But none of that prepared me for Babylon, he confesses. Here, I found not only gold and grain, but a reflection of my own heart's darkness. He leans closer, and you catch the faintest tremor in his voice. I came, seeking fortune. As all travelers do, I carried coins minted with emblems of gods I barely knew, but the city revealed truths I could not buy or barter away. He tells you of his first night under the ziggurat's shadow, when dreams crawled into his mind like restless serpents. He speaks of waking to voices chanting in a tongue that pried open ancient wounds, of waking again to find his own tongue, twisting into their words. I began to question the solidity of my own memories, he admits. Was I ever who I thought I was? Or merely a vessel for stories carried on the wind? His hands rise, palms open, as though offering the weight of his confession into the lamplight. I traded my cloaks for secrets, he whispers. I sold my stories in the market for spices. I carried home the scent of cedars, the taste of distant rivers. But each taste was hollow until I understood the city's own language, its heartbeat beneath the dust. He closes his eyes and the lamp's glow frames each line of his face, like an illuminated manuscript. You realize he speaks not of coins, but of transformation. He confesses that he wept beside the Euphrates for the first time, not out of sorrow or joy, but out of awe, at the river's patience, at the city's resilience, at the way each brick seemed to hold both birth and decay within its walls. He admits he stole a fragment of a carved brick from a temple floor, not for profit, but to carry a piece of Babylon's soul with him when he departed. He laughs softly, though it quivers. I am neither thief nor pilgrim, he says. I am a witness, and witnesses are sometimes unburdened by the truths they carry. In the deep hush that follows, you feel the lamplight's warmth settle between you, carrying the gravity of his confession. He stretches his legs, rising slowly, cloak trailing like a shadow. He bows to you, a gesture of gratitude, of release, and steps into the courtyard's cool darkness. The lamps inside blink behind him like fading stars. You remain by the table, tracing his words in the dust. His confession lingers, a quiet testament to the city's power to reshape even the most seasoned traveler. And as you step into the night, you carry his story like a whispered promise, that in Babylon every street holds a mirror, every chant holds a secret, and every traveler, no matter how far they wander, may find themselves changed in ways they cannot foresee. It happened on a morning so ordinary that no one remembered why they gathered at all. The sun rose pale over Babylon's western gate, and the market's bustle had barely begun when a rumor slipped through the alleys like spilled oil. A man from the distant village of Kish had declared himself monarch. His cloak was no silken robe, but a simple goat hair wrap dyed with cedar bark, and his crown was fashioned from reeds bound with bits of bronze wire scavenged from old chariot fittings. Yet there he stood atop a low platform in the central square, staff in hand, his voice rising in proclamation as though he truly held the scepter of Marduk himself. At first, laughter rippled through the crowd. Children paused their games to stare at this self-appointed king whose sandals were held together by battered twine, whose belt was a length of rope, and whose golden diadem was nothing more than a loop of bent copper stolen from a merchant's discarded pot. People nudged one another, pointing out the absurdity. A man with no army, no lineage, no seal, yet invoking the title reserved for the throne's rightful heir. It seemed a jest, a trick of the fool you might have seen weaving between stalls, until the village man spoke again, his voice unwavering. My name, he declared, is King Ashur-ibnia, chosen by the gods to restore greatness to this land. He cleared his throat and tried to continue, but the words caught in his throat. He furrowed his brow, glanced at scroll-toting scribes nearby, and then admitted in a whisper that carried through the hushed square, I have forgotten the name of my kingdom. For a moment there was stunned silence. Even the merchants ceased their bartering, their hands mid-weighing, their eyes locked on him. You could have heard the flapping of pigeons' wings as they darted from rooftops, disturbed by the sudden stillness. Then, as if released from an unseen spell, the crowd erupted, not with jeers, but with laughter so joyous and unrestrained that it echoed off the mud-brick walls like festival drums. The would-be king's face turned the color of baked clay as he grappled with his own folly. He searched the faces before him, hoping to find some thread of authority in their reactions. A few stout men stepped forward, not to seize his makeshift staff but to help him down from the platform. One offered water. Another retrieved his rope belt. A woman presented him with a scrap of parchment and a reed stylus, urging him to write and remember. He took the reed solemnly, his hands trembling, and scrawled an illegible line before dropping both reed and parchment to the dust. In an effort to save face, he tried to conjure the name again. My land is... Shumeria, he cried, causing an even louder peal of laughter, for that name belonged to neither Kish nor Babylon, but to a ghost of an empire long since vanished. A child called out, mimicking his voice, and the crowd repeated it in unison. Long live King Ashur-ibniya of Shumeria, they chanted, stamping their feet in mock coronation until the very stones beneath your sandals seemed to join in the jest. Yet, beneath the laughter, something unexpected unfolded. The village man slowly straightened, his embarrassment easing into a wry smile that creased the corners of his eyes. He raised his arms in a gesture of surrender, then embraced the absurdity of his own claim. Perhaps, he said gently, my kingdom is not a place, but this moment we share. He bowed deeply, not as a king fearful of losing power, but as a storyteller bidding farewell after a grand performance. The laughter softened into applause, quiet, respectful, even affectionate. Some tossed coins at his feet, others pressed handfuls of pomegranates and dates into his hands. One elderly scribe stepped forward, removed his own clay seal ring, and placed it in the man's open palm. Let this be your seal, he said, with a crooked grin, so you never forget how easily a man can crown himself, if only he can remember what for. The man accepted the ring with a nod so solemn it felt like ceremony, and then turned away, weaving through the crowd as they parted like waves. He slipped down a narrow side street toward Kish, the borrowed crown tilted askew on his head. The reed staff balanced across his shoulder. Behind him, the market resumed. The fishmonger resumed weighing his catch. The weaver adjusted her loom's warp. The children returned to their games. Yet, for days afterward, placards appeared in doorways, small clay tablets inscribed with the seal of Ashur-ibniya and the emblem of Shumeria, reminding passers-by of the briefest reign in Babylon's history. You smile as you imagine that scene, the reed crown, the forgotten kingdom, the laughter that bound strangers together in joyous absurdity. In Babylon, even the faintest echo of power can become legend. Even folly, given voice, can carve a place in memory. And so, long after the square has emptied and the wind scours away footprints, the story of the man who crowned himself, and forgot why, lingers like a whisper in the city's clay walls, a testament to the human capacity for both hubris and humility in a single breath. You lie on the straw mattress, not yet stirring, listening to the city's breath through the narrow window slit. The alley outside is hushed, though you know that beyond the walls, life has already begun its slow murmur. Footsteps in the dust, a goat's bleat, the soft scrape of turned earth. You feel the night's cool residue gathered on your skin, as if the clay walls held onto the chill to offer you one last moment of rest before the day's warmth arrives. At last, you shift. The straw rustles beneath you in muted protest. You draw your knees to your chest, cradle them there, and press your forehead against your arms, letting your breath slow, matching the alley's stillness. You imagine the city as a giant reed flute, its notes braced in the silent spaces between sound, and you exhale softly, becoming part of that hush. When you sit up, the first light slides across the floorboards in pale ribbons, carrying dust motes that drift like lantern embers. You pause to watch them float, for a moment untethered, one of the countless spirits dancing at dawn. You extend an arm, palm upward, to catch a single mote, as if you could hold the morning's promise there. It eludes your grasp, drifting away, and you smile within your chest at the city's quiet joke. You stand. Your feet press the cool clay floor, and you feel its slight give, the compact earth breathing beneath your weight. You stretch your arms wide, shoulders cracking in tiny echoes, and raise your face toward the window slit. The sky is a narrow band of pale rose. You lift your arms higher, tracing the sky's curve until your fingers hover just out of reach, as though greeting the sun before it fully rises. Clothing lies folded on a low stool, linen tunic, woolen shawl, sandals placed neatly by the threshold. You dress with mindful care, slipping the tunic over your head, fastening the waist with a simple knot, wrapping the shawl around one shoulder to catch the day's first breeze. Each fold is deliberate, a quiet prayer that you will move through the day with intention and grace. You step outside. The air has shifted, cooler now, sharpened by shadows that lengthen before the sun climbs. You pause in the alley, feeling the clay walls cradle you on both sides, as though the city itself supports your first step. You breathe deeply, tasting dust and stone and the faint tang of last night's incense that still drifts from an open window. Ahead, a woman carries a clay jar of water on her hip. She tilts her head in greeting. You bow your chin in return. No words pass between you. None are needed. You both know this ritual, the offering of water at dawn, the recognition that every drop sustains life and demands respect. You step forward, meeting her at the basin in the shared courtyard. You cup your hands, dip them into the cool water, and lift the liquid to your face, feeling its weight as it cascades down your cheeks, washing away sleep's residue. You let the water pool in your palms and drink a little, savoring its clarity, its promise of renewal. You pour the rest at your feet, letting it soak into the clay, an offering to the earth that holds you. The courtyard's hush holds the sound of your breath, and you close your eyes, pressing your palms to your chest. You whisper a fragment of a prayer learned by ear, not for fortune or fame, but for presence. Let me walk today with open senses. You inhale and exhale, letting the courtyard's silence seal your vow. When you open your eyes, the courtyard is brighter. A child scurries past, chasing a stray hen, and you laugh softly, the sound small but full of warmth. You turn toward the alley that leads into the heart of the city, feeling the day's promise unfold beneath your feet. You know you will carry this moment, a breath of water, a whisper of prayer, a silent vow, into every task, every greeting, every step. And so you walk, the clay yielding softly under your sandals, the city's heartbeat rising around you, and you awaken fully into Babylon's morning. You move from the hushed courtyard into the soft glare of morning light, where the narrow street stretches ahead like a ribbon woven from packed earth. Each footfall is a gentle imprint. No clatter, no rush, just the whisper of sandals brushing against clay. Around you, the city hums with unspoken purpose. A baker kneads dough in a stall's open doorway, fingers pressing into sticky barley flour as steam rises in gentle spirals. A potter turns wheel and clay in measured circles, the vessel growing under careful hands as if it were a living thing. A weaver's shuttle clicks forward, back, forward again, threading wool into fabric whose patterns will one day drape shoulders in quiet elegance. You pause by the baker's hearth, inhaling the faint sweetness of yeast and smoke. The baker looks up, nods, and hands you a small, warm cake, still soft enough to yield under your fingers. You taste it slowly, letting the crumb dissolve against the roof of your mouth. It is humble, earthy, and faintly tangy, but you savor each mouthful as though it were a rare delicacy. The baker's smile is brief but tender, an unspoken blessing for the day's labor that lies ahead for both of you. Continuing on, you reach the stalls where merchants arrange their wares. Jars of oil glimmer like liquid gold. Coils of dyed yarn hang like rainbows caught in permanent stillness. Baskets brimming with dates and figs beckon with dark sweetness. You greet the spice seller, a woman whose hands are stained saffron yellow from grinding turmeric, and watch her tilt jars to let scents drift. Cumin's earth, coriander's citrus, fenugreek's warmth. She offers you a pinch of each, and you inhale deeply, closing your eyes to let the layers of aroma settle into your senses. You nod in thanks and pass on, each spice's echo lingering like a promise on your tongue. Further along, you come to the communal workshop where laborers gather wood and reeds to mend baskets, mend roofs, mend walls. They work without instruction, their hands moving in harmony. One splits a reed, another threads it, a third weaves the strands into a new panel. You join them, lifting a split reed and bending it around the structure's frame, feeling its pliant strength yield to your will. As you weave, the world narrows to the hiss of reed against reed, the steady rhythm of breath and movement. A man, to your left, hums a soft melody, and you find your own breath matching its cadence, the task becoming a meditation. When the basket is finished, you set it aside, its form new and whole, and you rise to stretch limbs that have grown accustomed to the motion. The sun creeps higher, the shadows narrowing to slivers at your feet, and you sense the day pressing gently onward. You tuck the basket under your arm and continue toward the fields outside the city gate, following a caravan of laborers who carry jars of water for midday cooling, bundles of reeds for construction, and loaves of bread wrapped in linen. You walk beside them, your senses alive to the interplay of bodies and purpose, each person a thread in the tapestry of morning's work. Across the threshold of the outer wall, the air shifts, dustier, windward, tinged with reeds and rippling water. You join those who tend the gardens that feed the city's tables, bending to harvest mint and cilantro, to pluck ripe pomegranates whose skins glint like polished stones. You carry a woven basket on your hip, filling it carefully so as not to bruise the fruit. Each pomegranate you lay inside rests like a hidden treasure, its seeds bright as dawn, waiting to burst with juice and promise. With the basket full, you return through the gate, the city's hum greeting you again, the drone of conversation, the scrape of carts over cobbles, the call of a vendor coaxing customers to his spice stall. You deliver the pomegranates to a courtyard where women prepare midday feasts, crushing grapes for wine, stirring bowls of yogurt with honey, rolling dolmas stuffed with rice and herbs. They welcome you with smiles, passing you a taste of their work, and you feel the shared pride in tending the city's needs. By mid-morning, the sun no longer hesitates to warm the earth. You finish your tasks, bread delivered, baskets woven, herbs harvested, and you stand in the light, dust motes dancing at your feet like drifting embers. You breathe in the mingled scents of labor and life, of churned earth and fresh produce, of wood smoke and spice. In this moment, you are part of the city's pulse, each action both humble and essential, each breath a quiet affirmation that work and community are inseparable. You turn toward the alley that leads back to the heart of Babylon, carrying with you the satisfaction of morning's endeavor. The tasks you have done are not grand, but they are real. They are the building blocks of living. And as you step forward, you know that every hour of labor, every gesture of care, weaves you more deeply into the tapestry of this ancient city, one measured moment at a time. You step into the shade of a broad awning, where linen cloth flutters overhead, unraveling sunlight into soft ribbons that dance across your shoulders. The midday heat presses in from every direction, and the air feels thick with promise and weariness combined. You settle onto a low mat beside a shallow basin of water, lifting your sandals to let the cool clay rest against your soles. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, letting the hush of shade cradle you between labor's demands. Before you lies the spread, a shallow clay bowl of barley stew, flecked with chopped onions and drizzled with olive oil, a platter of flatbread rounds, their edges crisp and centers soft, a small dish of crushed olives steeped in brine, and a cup of spiced beer, its froth trembling at the rim. The scents mingle: earthy grain, pungent fruit, bright oil, and you inhale them as if greeting old friends. Each item has been prepared with care, not for lavish display, but for sustenance and shared comfort. You take up the flatbread first, breaking it into irregular pieces with gentle fingers. You use a fragment to scoop stew into your mouth, the warm grain sliding against your tongue in soft, familiar rhythm. You chew slowly, feeling the texture shift from grainy to tender, tasting the faint sweetness of onion and the faint tang of fermented barley. You pause between bites to brush a drop of sweat from your brow, and in that pause, you observe the world around you. A child leaning against, a pillar spooning stew for an elder, a merchant reclining on a mat, lifting olives to his lips like precious gems, a scribe turning the rim of her cup thoughtfully as she reads a tablet's inscription. As you sip the spiced beer, its cool bitterness courses through you, calming the day's tension. You feel the drink's warmth emerge from your chest, spreading outward like sun-warmed clay. The spices, coriander and juniper, linger on your palate, a reminder that even simple nourishment can be adorned with subtle ceremony. You swallow and close your eyes, listening to the hum of conversation around you, the soft murmur of voices trading news, the scrape of sandals shifting on packed earth, the distant clink of a tool set down in readiness for afternoon tasks. You reach for the olives next, letting their brine slide across your fingers before pressing one against your tongue. The olive's flesh yields with a gentle pop, releasing salt and oil in a burst of deep, savory comfort. You imagine the trees it came from, gnarled and ancient, leaves shimmering in cooler dawns, now resting under the sun's midday gaze. You press a second olive into your mouth and taste the fruit of patience and time. Between bites, you lift your gaze to the bustling market beyond the awning. The midday sun gilds the tops of tents and banners, casting patterned shadows that shift. With the wind, you see a group of women negotiating for cloth, bright reds and muted indigos hanging like ripe fruit, while behind them, a boy leads two goats tethered by vines. A potter hefts a newly thrown jar to test its balance, and a merchant weighs copper rings, the beam dancing with tiny, precise motions. Each scene is framed by the steady pulse of breathing, of life paused to nourish itself before pressing on. You finish the barley stew, scraping the bowl's bottom with a scrap of bread to gather every last morsel. You pour water over your hands, in the basin, letting droplets cascade over your knuckles and run down your wrists, washing away grease and dust together. You shake off the water in quick flicks, pausing only to appreciate the hyacinth-scented breeze that drifts through the tapestry of shade. You press your hands to your face to cool your temples, then set them in your lap, fingers loose and relaxed. Your meal concludes with a small plate of yogurt sweetened with date syrup. You taste its tart creaminess, the sweetness counterbalancing the sun's sharp gaze. You press the cool spoon to your lips, letting the flavor melt slowly as you watch a hawk wheel overhead, its cry distant and sharp. You think of afternoon tasks awaiting you, messages to deliver, goods to sort, rituals to perform, but for this moment, none of it matters. You rise, stretching until your spine arcs like a gentle reed in the wind, and you fold your mat with care. You tuck the dishes away, stacking them neatly beside the basin. You draw a final sip of water, letting it wash down any lingering heat, and you bow your head in silent thanks for nourishment, shade, and the quiet company of fellow souls at midday. You step back into the street, where the light is harsh and the city's breath quickens again. Yet you carry with you the pause you claimed beneath the awning, a stillness that will sustain each step until evening's relief. And as you walk toward the next chapter of your day, you know that in Babylon, even midday rest is a ceremony of renewal, a bridge between toil and twilight's promise. The afternoon light mellows, turning the clay walls to a honeyed amber as you step back into the city's current. Tasks remain. Messages to carry to the scribe's house, jars of oil to fetch from the storeroom, robes to mend beneath the weaver's awning, but each is approached with the same unhurried mindfulness you practiced at dawn and noon. You gather a small linen pouch of reed pens and ink, bow to the scribe who waits beneath a vine-draped trellis, then slip inside his courtyard where dust motes waltz in slanted light. He hands you a clay tablet, its edges worn smooth, and you trace the cuneiform impressions gently with a fingertip, memorizing the words before tucking the tablet into your arms. You walk onward, the weight of the tablet nestled against your chest, and pass through market lanes where laughter drifts like incense. A group of women shape clay hearts as tokens of love and secret prayers, pressing their thumbs into the pliant surfaces to imprint blessings. You pause to shape a heart of your own, your thumb making a single deep dimple in the clay, then offer it to the nearest child whose eyes light with delight. The moment feels suspended, a small miracle of connection amid the bustle. Beyond the stalls, craftsmen gather in a shaded alley to repair broken pottery. You join them, hands coated in slip as you press shards into new forms, smoothing edges, until the joins disappear. Each repaired vessel tells a story of loss and restoration, its healed seams as meaningful as unbroken surfaces. Conversation here is low and gentle. A potter hums a fragment of a folk song, another recounts a dream of water flowing uphill. You listen, dipping your fingers in water to keep the clay malleable, feeling the shared rhythm of creation and repair unite every gesture. Later, you find a narrow courtyard where elders play a board game of strategy, moving carved pieces across a wooden grid. The sun filters through lattice work, casting patterned shadows on the board. You sit at the edge, learning the rules by watching. The way each piece represents a soldier, a chariot, a fortress of thought. When your turn arrives, you move a small ivory token, its weight deliberate, and the elder opposite you nods in approval. You laugh softly when your piece is captured, and he offers a gentle rebuke. Strategy is patience, my friend. You ponder that as you reset the pieces, tasting the sweetness of each learned lesson. In the late afternoon, the city's tempo softens further. You walk to the riverbank, where reeds sigh against the current and fishermen mend their nets in hushed concentration. You sit beside a man whose hands are gnarled from years of pulling line, and he hands you a length of worn netting. He shows you how to knot a new mesh, your fingers fumbling before finding the pattern's rhythm. As you work, you listen to water gurgling over stones, to birds calling from the opposite shore, to the soft clink of a fisherman's hook against clay. You realize that here, the simple act of repair is a form of reverence for water's gift, of life, and for the craft that sustains communities. When your net is whole again, you rise and walk upstream to a small shaded alcove where musicians gather at day's end. A lyre rests against a reed throne, its strings catching the last rays of sun. You sit at the edge as a musician plucks a gentle melody, the notes drifting across water and stone like a blessing. Nearby, a second player taps a drum in a heartbeat's echo, slow and steady. You close your eyes, letting the music flow through. You, washing away the residue of labor, weaving rest into your bones. The tune shifts to a lullaby, each chord softening the edges of the day, inviting calm. As the sun dips low, you return to the city's streets, the sky painted in streaks of rose and gold. You pause at an open doorway where friends gather for tea, herbal infusion of mint and coriander served in small clay cups. You accept one, inhaling its cooling fragrance, and sit among them as day fades into dusk. Conversation is light. Plans for the morrow's festival, news of travelers arriving with exotic goods, the comfort of a familiar face in a city so grand. You raise your cup in silent camaraderie, sipping slowly as the air cools and stars begin to appear. By the time you stand to leave, lanterns flicker to life along alley walls, casting gentle halos of glow. You stroll back to your own threshold, each step mindful, as if guided by the city's unseen hand. You pause to touch the cool clay of the wall, feeling its warmth seep into your palm before it fades. You carry with you the woven tapestry of afternoon tasks and scattered moments of rest, the laughter of children, the hush of repair, the hush of music, the hush of shared tea. And as you step inside, closing the door behind you, you bring the day's gentle lessons with you, that work can be ritual, that repair can be prayer, that leisure can be communion. In Babylon, each afternoon holds the promise of balance, weaving care and craft into the living mosaic of life. The day's final light seeps out of the sky like honey drained from a jar, and you step into the cooling evening that gathers around clay walls like a soft cloak. The air holds the scent of embers, faint smoke spiraling from hearths where last embers glow, and the distant murmur of the river now deepens into a gentle lullaby. You walk slowly through the narrow alleys, each footfall echoing softly against walls that glow copper in the lamplight. In the open courtyard of a neighbor's home, you pause to watch the evening meal being set out. Bowls of spiced lentils, platters of flatbread torn into shards, small dishes of olives and pickled vegetables glinting like jewels. A low fire crackles, its embers alive beneath a clay pot where tea simmers with cloves and mint. You inhale the aroma, letting its warmth fill your chest as though to ward off the night's chill. You greet the family inside with a bow, and they beckon you to join them. You settle beside the fire, where woven mats cradle your weight, and the host pours steaming tea into a small cup. You sip slowly, feeling the warmth unfurl through your limbs like silk. Conversation is hushed and kind, stories of the day's small victories, mended pottery, a fair bargain struck in the market, a child's first barley grain chewed without complaint. Laughter drifts low, a soft current beneath the tea's steam, and you share in it, your chest lifting and falling in gentle harmony with the courtyard's fading bustle. When the meal is over and the dishes set aside, you step back into the street where lanterns flicker like tethered stars. Each glow guides your steps, across the river's reflecting surface where ripples dance in silver arcs, beneath the stork nests perched on rooftops, past the temple precinct where a final incense coil drifts skyward as an offering to the night gods. The city hums a quiet yes to darkness, welcoming its cool embrace. You return to your own threshold, pausing to lift a small oil lamp and place it on a low shelf by the door. Its flame unfurls in a single breath, casting dancing shadows that play along the walls. You remove your shawl and sandals, laying them aside with reverence as though preparing for a sacred rite. You step into the room where your straw mattress awaits, stepping carefully over the threshold as though crossing from one world into another. The hearth here is cold, but you kindle a small fire in the corner, coaxing embers from yesterday's coals. The gentle crackle and hiss cradle your senses as you settle onto the mattress. You draw the woolen blanket across your shoulders, feeling its textured warmth press against your skin, and then you lie back, your head cushioned by a small cloth pillow scented faintly of lavender and thyme, herbs meant to ease the mind toward dreams. Above you, the ceiling beams soften into shadow, and the walls seem to breathe with you. You close your eyes, drawing in a final breath of the night air, cool, still rich with distant laughter and the river's lullaby. Your limbs grow heavy, your thoughts slow to a gentle drift. You recall the day's small moments, the taste of barley stew, the texture of mended clay, the hush of music by water's edge, the warmth of shared tea. Each recollection unfolds like a petal in your mind's eye, folding inward toward rest. Outside, the lantern's gutter and the city's pulse settles into deep, rhythmic breaths. A night breeze stirs the reed curtains at your window, carrying a soft rustle that lulls your heart. You feel the boundary between wakefulness and dream dissolve. Your body surrenders to the straw beneath you, to the blanket's embrace, to the dark's gentle invitation. And as you drift beyond the edge of thought, you carry Babylon's evening hymn within you, the murmur of water, the whisper of smoke, the hush of footsteps on clay. You breathe in harmony with the city's night. You breathe out, releasing the world you walked so fully today. Sleep finds you. You linger between waking and dreaming, the remnants of Babylon's night still brushing your consciousness like silk. In this gentle space you glimpse two worlds side by side, one shaped by clay and river, the other by metal and electric hum. In ancient Babylon, light came from oil lamps whose flames quivered at every breath. Warmth came from hearth coals, coaxed to life, and answers to your questions were carried by priests chanting at dawn. Now you wake to a switch that banishes darkness in an instant, wrap yourself in blankets of synthetic warmth, and summon knowledge with a fingertip. There is ease here unimaginable in the reed-hung alleys. There is comfort woven into every modern corner. Yet, as you breathe, you sense how much was surrendered when the world sped up. The pause in the courtyard, the hush before a prayer, the slow communion of shared bread and hearth fire. In this modern dawn, you carry a capsule of medicine to quiet, a fever, breathe filtered air cooled by machines, and navigate paths traced by satellites above. You have extended life, mapped the stars with telescopes, built bridges across oceans. You hold distant voices in your palm and travel continents. In hours, such gains shimmer like promises fulfilled. Yet you also carry a curious emptiness, a hunger for the simplicity of barley porridge shared at sunrise, the tangible ritual of oil poured in prayer, the tactile comfort of clay under fingertips. You miss the way every task in Babylon was suffused with purpose. Planting seeds was part of a sacred covenant. Weaving cloth was a hymn to community. Even sorrow had its ceremony, turning loss into memory that anchored the living. Here, life is fast, efficient, connected, yet sometimes disembodied, untethered, as though the soul wandered between screens and skylines without a ritual to call it home. And now, as you lie beneath the familiar weight of modern blankets, you carry both worlds within you. You have tasted the hush of clay corridors and inhaled the incense of devotion. You have felt the river's pulse, mended broken pottery by lantern light, and shared tea whose steam carried promises of connection. You carry those memories like treasured beads strung against your heart, reminders that life's depth is woven in simple acts performed with presence. In your world of light switches and smartphones, you possess the freedom to pause, to breathe deeply, to honor small rituals of your own making, lighting a candle at dusk, setting intentions with each sip of tea, listening for the hush that lives between breaths. So, as you drift towards sleep, let these echoes guide you. Let the slow rhythm of Babylon's days shape your dreams. Remember that beneath every hurried moment lies the potential for presence, beneath every task lies the seed of ceremony, and beneath every breath lies the world's quiet pulse. Now, rest. Let Babylon's timeless lullaby carry you across the bridge of memory into the soft unfolding of dream. The lantern's glow grows faint as embers settle softly into ash. In the hush of your chamber, each breath feels framed by the clay walls, a cocoon of silence that holds you gently between dusk and dream. Beyond the shuttered window, the city's last lanterns wink out one by one, until only the distant pulse of the river remains, a muted hymn carried on the night breeze. You lie beneath your woolen blanket, its texture familiar and warm, and feel the day's tapestry of moments unfurl behind your closed eyelids. The tremble of dawn light on the straw mattress, the whisper of prayers in the temple courtyard, the laughter echoing through the market square, the hush of hearth and home when all else has passed into rest. In this lilting half-light, Your thoughts drift like motes of dust in a shaft of moonlight, each memory a soft glow that guides you toward deeper quiet. You recall the reed crown perched earnestly atop the fool's head, ridiculous and wise all at once. You remember the slow weight of clay as your hands shaped heart-shaped tokens. You taste the lingering sweetness of pomegranate seeds beneath the sun's high glare. Each sensation folds into the next, creating a lullaby sung by time itself, a melody that spans millennia and settles in your bones with comforting insistence. Outside, the wind moves through the alley reeds, their rustle like distant voices sharing secrets meant only for listening ears. You imagine the ghosts of those who walked these streets before, laborers, priests, merchants, fools, each carrying their own prayers and burdens, each finding rest beneath the same sky. The air around you shivers with their presence, luminous and intangible, as though the walls themselves remember every soul that ever slept within them. In the hush, you sense their gentle company, a silent chorus that cradles you beyond fear or loneliness. Your body sinks deeper into the mattress, limbs heavy with the day's rhythm, mind untethered from the urgency of modern hours. The blanket's weight is a promise, its fibers woven with the echoes of countless hearth fires and midnight vigils. You press your hand against your chest, feeling the steady drum of your heart, a soft testament to life's fragile persistence. In that steady beat, you recognize the same pulse that guided villagers as they sowed their fields, that comforted a dying elder, that spurred lovers beneath the canopy of night sprays. It is the world's quiet insistence that, even in darkness, there is light. A single star pierces the window's slit, a pinpoint of brilliance in the vast vault of night. You lift your gaze, even as your body remains still, and you imagine it shining above the mud-brick walls of Babylon, visible to both ancient eyes and your own. You let its distant glow tether you to a larger story, one that stretches from the river's fertile banks to the farthest reaches of time. In that star's silent watch, you feel both infinitesimal and infinite, a single breath in the endless sigh of existence. And now, as sleep's tide rises, you release the last threads of wakefulness. You surrender the need to remember every detail, trusting that what matters will root itself within you like seed in rich soil. You allow your thoughts to scatter, like candle sparks, everyone dissolving into nothingness until only the core remains. The simple truth that you have walked in another age, felt its breath upon your skin, and carried its heartbeat into your own. The hearth's ashes drift coolly in the corner. The lantern's flame slips into darkness. The river's hymn fades beneath the weight of night. You close your eyes fully, and the world within you shifts. Clay walls recede, lamps extinguish, ziggurats dissolve into shadow, and in that quiet surrender, you find yourself cradled by sleep, embraced by the hush that lives beyond every ending. The fire dims. The wind rests. You breathe, and sleep finds you. You have wandered under clay walls and felt the breath of an empire that rose and fell with the rhythm of the river. You have worn linen tunics brushed by dawn light, tasted barley stew, steeped in history and heard the soft whispers of gods carried on incense smoke. You have bowed before kings and jesters alike, learned the language of omens in cracked pavement and drifting smoke, and carried a reed crown upon your head. Eyes crown, then question of belonging. You have shaped clay hearts with calloused hands, mended broken vessels in a courtyard of laughter, and traced cuneiform lines on tablets that hold the memory of an entire civilization. You have inhaled the harmony of workshop hammers and marketplace melodies, washed your face in basin water that carried both prayer and promise, and felt the weight of an amulet warm against your chest, a silent guardian in a world woven from faith and necessity. You have scaled the ziggurat of ritual, witnessed sacrifices offered beneath carved reliefs, and felt the hush that falls when oil is poured and prayers rise. You have drifted through festivals where lanterns bloomed like stars on earth, tasted honeyed bread under moonlight, and moved with the hush of music that coaxed your spirit to rest. You have learned the slow art of family and home, where whispers bind more powerfully than commands, and where grief and celebration share the same breath. Now you return to your own world, where light bends to a switch, where warmth blooms with a flick of cloth, where knowledge flows from screens instead of priests. Yet you carry within you the pulse of ancient life, the steady drum of labor and ritual, the quiet echoes of laughter and prayer, the soft cadence of presence in every motion. Let these echoes settle in your bones as you breathe out the last of sleep's reluctance and breathe in the promise of dream. And if you're still awake, rest easy. You have survived a day of clay and incense, of stars both distant and remembered. You have looked into the heart of a city that both beggars the mind and gifts the soul. Now you may drift beyond memory, beyond time, into the soft cradle of slumber. For you have survived Babylon, and in its gentle unmaking, you have remade yourself anew. Sleep well. You have earned it.